Hello friend, welcome to the Galactic HFY Story, where stories and science combine to create the magic. With real human voices, no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon for the latest updates and get ready for the real experience of science. Let's start.
They said humans would never survive the Garrison Academy. Not one cycle. Not even orientation week. The galaxy's most elite military institution had broken empires, shattered legends, and reduced the proudest warrior species to trembling wrecks who begged for discharge. In 3,000 years, the Academy had never graduated a full class. Fatality rates hovered at 47%. Dropout rates claimed another 40. The remaining 13% lived, but not without cost. Missing limbs, shattered minds, the kind of scars that don't heal. And humans? Humans were supposed to be the weakest species to ever receive an invitation. Death World survivors, yes, but soft. Breakable. No exoskeleton. No venom sacs. No redundant organs or regenerative capabilities. Just pink flesh stretched over fragile calcium frames, kept alive by the galaxy's most ridiculous biology. They needed to breathe every few seconds. Their homeworld gravity was considered a recreational setting on most space stations. Their reaction times clocked in at the lower quartile of known sentient species. When the file mistake happened, when some exhausted administrator on Kepler Station accidentally forwarded the Garrison Academy invitation to the human embassy instead of the Hectarian war fleet, nobody noticed for 6 weeks. By then, 32 humans had already accepted. By the time the Galactic Education Consortium realized the error, transport ships were already inbound. The consortium convened emergency sessions. There were calls to revoke the invitations. Heated debates about liability and interstellar incident protocols. But the humans had already signed the waivers, already acknowledged the mortality statistics, already paid the non-refundable registration fees in full. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, were contractually vicious. So the consortium did nothing. They watched. They waited. They prepared the memorial protocols and set up trauma counseling stations near the human sectors. What they didn't prepare for was what actually happened, because nobody in the Galactic Council had bothered to ask the one question that mattered. Nobody had pulled the full geological survey of Earth. Nobody had cross-referenced human evolutionary history with the Academy's threat assessment matrices. Nobody had run the comparative stress analysis. Nobody had realized that the Garrison Academy, the deadliest training institution in known space, had been accidentally calibrated to train soldiers for a world that was safer than the one humans called home. This is the story of what happened when the galaxy's most dangerous school met a species that thought danger was weather. The transport ship Meridian Crossing dropped out of warp space above Garrison Prime with the kind of shudder that made most species reach for motion sickness medication. The humans barely noticed. They were too busy staring out the observation ports at the planet below. Garrison Prime looked like someone had taken a moon, covered it in gun emplacements, and then gotten bored halfway through and started adding random hazards for entertainment. The planet was small, tectonically unstable, and orbited a binary star system that created temperature swings of 60 degrees within a standard rotation. The atmosphere was technically breathable, but only in the way that drinking salt water was technically hydration. Kai Zhang pressed his face against the observation port, breath fogging the glass. 23 years old, former extreme sports instructor from the Yunnan province, built like he'd been assembled from spare parts and optimism. He'd signed up for the academy because his student loan debt was approximately the size of a small nation's GDP, and the Garrison recruitment bonus could actually make a dent. That's it, Kai said. That's the planet that kills everyone. Beside him, Sergeant Maria Santos snorted. Santos was 37, former Brazilian Special Forces, and had the kind of face that suggested she'd seen some things and then filed them under Tuesday. She joined because her last 3 combat tours had been so boring she'd started a knitting circle with her squad. The Garrison Academy promised actual challenges. Looks like Arizona, Santos said. With worse weather. Everything has worse weather than Arizona, said Yuki Tanaka from across the cabin. Yuki was the youngest at 19, barely old enough to drink in most Federation stations, with a physics degree from Tokyo University and the kind of cheerful optimism that made people either love her or want to push her out an airlock. She'd applied to the academy on a dare and gotten accepted with the highest entrance exam scores in a century. The atmospheric composition is actually fascinating. The oxygen content is 3% higher than Earth standard, which should enhance physical performance, but the pressure differential means we'll need to adjust our breathing patterns for optimal efficiency. Yuki, Kai said, no offense, but you make everything sound like a textbook. That's because everything is like a textbook if you read enough of them. The Meridian crossing began its descent. Through the observation ports, the other species transport ships came into view. Dozens of them. The Hectarians had sent a war clan of 40, each one standing 3 meters tall, with chitinous armor that could deflect small arms fire. The Vex Collective had contributed 25 of their finest, each one a hive mind cluster with distributed intelligence and redundant biological systems. The Karathi had sent their traditional 12 warrior priests who could enter meditative states that slowed their perception of time and let them process threats at superhuman speeds. And then there were the humans. 32 of them. Average height, 1.7 meters. Average weight, 72 kilograms. Special abilities, none that registered on standard biological scans. The Academy's threat assessment AI had flagged them as statistical anomalies. Projected survival rate, 4%. Projected graduation rate, 0.3%. The AI had recommended immediate evacuation and refund of registration fees. But the humans had signed the waivers. The transport touched down on landing pad 7 with a metallic groan that sounded like the ship was regretting its life choices. The cabin lights shifted to green. The deployment ramp began its descent with hydraulic hiss. Here we go, Santos said, standing and rolling her shoulders with the kind of casual readiness that came from 20 years of walking into bad situations. Remember the briefing. Stay together. Don't antagonize the other species. Try not to die in the first week. You make it sound so easy, Kai said, grabbing his pack. That's because you haven't seen the statistics. The ramp met the ground with a clang that echoed across the landing pad. The air that rolled and was hot and dry and tasted like copper and ozone. The gravity hit them like a polite suggestion. Earth standard was 9.8 meters per second squared. Garrison Prime clocked in at 8.3. The humans stepped off the transport and immediately started looking around like tourists who'd gotten lost on the way to a museum. The landing pad was massive, designed to accommodate ships 5 times the size of the Meridian crossing. The ground was scored with blast marks and what looked suspiciously like claw gouges. In the distance, the Academy complex rose like a fortress carved from the mountain itself, all sharp angles and defensive positions and the kind of architecture that screamed people die here regularly. The other species were already forming up in their designated zones. The Hectarians stood in perfect military formation, mandibles clicking in synchronized communication. The Vex Collective had arranged themselves in a neural cluster pattern, their bodies swaying in unison. The Karathi knelt in meditation circles, their breathing so controlled it was almost inaudible. The humans mostly just kind of wandered around and took pictures. A Hectarian commander noticed this. Chitinous plates rattling with what might have been indignation. The translator picked up, undisciplined prey species. They won't last the first trial. Santos heard this. She didn't speak Hectarian, but she'd spent enough years in combat zones to recognize trash talk in any language. She smiled. The kind of smile that usually preceded someone having a very bad day. Hey Kai, she said, not taking her eyes off the Hectarian. How many languages does your translator have loaded? About 40? What? Learn how to say "see you at graduation" in Hectarian. Before Kai could respond, a new sound cut across the landing pad. A deep, resonant thrum that made the air itself vibrate. Every species present immediately went silent and turned toward the Academy complex. A figure emerged from the main gate. Commander Thexral of the VRYNN Dominion. 7 feet of scaled muscle and predatory grace. The VRYNN were apex predators on a world where everything else was also an apex predator, which led to a very competitive ecosystem and a species with extremely strong opinions about hierarchy. Thexral had been the Academy's head of combat training for 43 standard years. Under his watch, the mortality rate had actually improved from 52% to 47%, which the Academy considered a stunning success. He carried no weapons. He didn't need them. The VRYNN could bite through reinforced steel, and their claws secreted a paralytic toxin that could drop a Hectarian in 30 seconds. Thexral surveyed the assembled recruits with a kind of gaze that suggested he was mentally calculating how many would survive long enough to learn his name. His translator clicked on. The voice was like gravel being dragged over broken glass. "I'm Commander Thexral. For the next 4 standard cycles, I am your commanding officer, your instructor, and the reason you will question every decision that led you to this moment. The Garrison Academy does not produce soldiers. It produces survivors. The galaxy sends us its best, and we break them down to their component elements to see what remains. Most of you will fail. Some of you will die. The rest will wish you had." He paused. Let that sink in. The Academy has 3 rules. First, your survival is your responsibility. We will provide training, equipment, and scenarios. We will not provide mercy. Second, species discrimination is forbidden. Here you're not Hectarian or Vex or Karathi. You are recruits. Your value is measured in performance, not biology. Third, there are no rules in the field. The scenarios you face will not be fair. They will not be balanced. They will not be designed for your comfort. They will be designed to kill you. Your job is to make that difficult. Another pause. Thexral's eyes swept across the formations, lingering briefly on the humans with something that might have been confusion or perhaps indigestion. Your first trial begins in 1 standard hour. You'll be issued basic equipment and released into the Rust Valley for a 72-hour survival exercise. You will travel in species cohort groups. There will be no extraction for injuries. There will be no medical support. You will either survive or provide educational examples for future classes. Report to Equipment Distribution Bay 3. Dismissed. The other species immediately began moving, their formations shifting with military precision. The humans looked at each other. Did he say 72 hours? Kai asked. With no medical support, Yuki added helpfully. In a place called Rust Valley, which definitely sounds like a pleasant vacation spot. Santos just shrugged. Could be worse. Ow! It could be raining. As if the universe had been waiting for exactly that cue, the sky opened up. What fell wasn't water. The rain on Garrison Prime was acidic runoff from the mineral-rich mountains, with a pH that could strip paint and a temperature that registered somewhere between uncomfortably hot and technically boiling. The other species immediately activated protective shields, energy barriers shimmering into existence around their formations. The humans looked up at the rain, then at each other. Then Kai started laughing. "Oh man," he said, rain streaming down his face. "This is going to be fun." Thexral, watching from the gate, felt something he hadn't experienced in 43 years of service. Confusion. The humans were smiling. Nobody smiled on Garrison Prime. Not during orientation. Not during the first trial briefing. Certainly not during acid rain. He made a note in his personal log. Monitor human cohort closely. Possible psychological instability. May require early termination if they become a danger to themselves or others. He had no way of knowing that note would eventually be filed under understatement of the millennium. The humans headed toward Equipment Distribution Bay 3, walking through the acid rain like it was a light drizzle at a summer barbecue. Behind them, The other species exchanged glances through their protective barriers. The Hectarian commander clicked his mandibles in what might have been concern. They're defective. They must be. No species walks through acid rain without protection. The Vex collective processed this information across their distributed consciousness and came to a consensus. The humans are either incredibly stupid or operating with information we don't possess. Probability of survival: negligible. Recommend maintaining distance to avoid contamination of our survival strategy. The Karathi simply watched and said nothing. They had a saying in their culture: the prey that acts like a predator either knows something or has nothing left to lose. They would spend the next 72 hours trying to figure out which category the humans occupied. Equipment Distribution Bay 3 was exactly as welcoming as it sounded. The bay was carved directly into the mountain face, a massive cavern lit by harsh industrial lighting that cast everything in shades of gray and regret. The walls were lined with equipment racks, each one labeled with species-specific gear. The floor was stamped metal grating over what appeared to be a drop of about 50 feet into some kind of processing system, because apparently even the storage areas on Garrison Prime had to be potentially lethal. The human cohort filed in, still dripping from the acid rain. Santos noticed several of them had minor skin irritation where the rain had hit exposed flesh. Not bad. About equivalent to a mild sunburn. Yuki was already pulling out a portable scanner and taking readings. Fascinating, she muttered. The acid concentration is actually lower than I expected based on the atmosphere composition. It's almost like the planet's ecology has adapted to reduce the acidity over time. Yuki, Kai said, are you seriously doing science right now? I'm always doing science. That's how science works. An equipment officer emerged from a side passage. Bravac species, short and stocky with 6 arms, and the kind of perpetually exhausted expression that came from years of dealing with recruit incompetence. His translator crackled to life. Human cohort. Désignation H7. Step forward for equipment distribution. The humans approached the distribution counter. The officer consulted his datapad, mandibles twitching in what might have been confusion. All of you are registered? All 32, Santos confirmed. That's That's unusual. Most species send military units. Trained soldiers. What are you? Santos Zmilid. Mixed bag. Some military. Some civilian. Some academics. Some people who signed up because they were bored. The officer stared at her. Bored. Extremely bored. You do understand the mortality statistics? We signed the waivers. The officer made a sound that the translator couldn't quite process, somewhere between a sigh and a prayer to forgotten gods. Right. Okay. Standard survival kits. Each kit contains 1 thermal regulator suit, 1 comm unit, 1 emergency beacon, 1 multi-tool, 1 protein synthesizer, 1 water filtration unit, and 1 weapon of your choice from the approved list. What's the approved list? Kai asked. The officer gestured to a wall panel. It lit up with options. Plasma rifles, kinetic accelerators, sonic disruptors, energy blades, the kind of weapons that could take down small buildings or large predators, depending on your aim and your definition of predator. The humans studied the list. Can we just take knives? Santos asked. The officer blinked. All 6 eyes. Independently. Knives? Yeah. Like. Good knives. Fixed blade. Full tang. Maybe 8 to 10 inches. Ugh. The scenarios include hostile fauna that can withstand plasma fire. Okay, but sea knives don't run out of batteries. The officer looked at his datapad. Then at Santos. Then at his datapad again, as if hoping it would provide guidance for this specific situation. It did not. There are knives. In the primitive weapons section. Those are decorative. For ceremonial purposes. Perfect. We'll take those. 20 minutes later, the human cohort walked out of Equipment Distribution Bay 3, each one carrying a survival pack and wearing a thermal regulator suit that looked like it had been designed for a species with a completely different body structure. The suits hung off them in places and pinched in others. Yuki's suit was about 6 sizes too large. Kai's was too small in the shoulders and too long in the legs. But they all had knives. Good knives. The kind that could dress game, cut rope, pry open containers, and, if necessary, serve as improvised weapons. Carbon steel blades with proper hilts and decent balance. The equipment officer watched them go with the expression of someone who had just witnessed something that violated several fundamental assumptions about reality. They took knives, he said to nobody in particular. They had access to plasma rifles, and they took knives. His colleague, a VRYNN female who'd been processing equipment for 20 years, didn't even look up from her inventory data pad. First human cohort, yes. Mark it in the log. We'll need it for the memorial services. You think they'll all die? I think they took knives to a survival trial on Garrison Prime. What do you think? Outside, the human cohort assembled in the staging area. The other species were already there, checking their equipment, testing their weapons, running final diagnostic checks on their armor and shield generators. The humans were comparing knives and arguing about the best way to start a fire without matches. Fexral observed this from the command deck, his confusion deepening into something approaching concern. Tactical assessment, he said to his second-in-command, a Karathi female named Shunvier who'd survived 3 academy cycles and gone on to command distinction. Shunvier studied the humans through the observation screens. They're either playing a strategy we don't recognize, or they're going to be dead within 12 hours. Your professional opinion? The ones with military bearing know what they're doing. The rest, I don't know. They're calm. Too calm. Nobody is this calm before the Rust Valley trial unless they're in shock or they're insane. Or they don't understand the danger. Commander, they walked through acid rain without protection and laughed about it. They understand danger. They have a different relationship with it than any species I've encountered. Fexral made another note in his log. Human cohort displays abnormal threat response. Possible psychological conditioning. Alternative hypothesis. Evolutionary adaptation to high-stress environments. Recommend elevated monitoring. The staging area's main hatch began to open with a grinding mechanical protest. Beyond it, the Rust Valley stretched out under the binary sunset, all red rocks and thermal vents, and the kind of hostile terrain that made most species reconsider their career choices. Survival trial begins now. Fexral's voice echoed across the staging area. 72 hours. No extraction. No support. Your objective is to reach the beacon on the far side of the valley. Distance, approximately 80 kilometers. The valley contains 17 documented hostile fauna species. The terrain is unstable. The weather is unpredictable. Your equipment has been calibrated for your species' baseline requirements. If you do not reach the beacon within 72 hours, you fail. If you die, you fail. If you activate your emergency beacon for anything short of imminent mortality, you fail. There are no second chances. There are no makeups. There is only survival. Begin. The other species moved out immediately, formations tight, weapons ready, every sense on high alert. The humans stood there for a moment, looking at the valley. Then, Santos turned to the group. Okay, standard hiking protocol. 2-column formation, rotating point. We move at sustainable pace, not maximum speed. Conserve energy. Watch for hazards. Stay hydrated. Questions. Are we seriously just going to walk? Kai asked. You got a better idea? I mean, no, but it feels weird that walking is the plan. Walking is always the plan. Walking works. Yuki raised her hand like she was in class. According to my calculations, if we maintain an average pace of 4 kilometers per hour with appropriate rest breaks, we should reach the beacon in approximately 24 hours, which gives us a significant buffer for unexpected delays or environmental challenges. See, Santos said. Science agrees. Let's go walk across a death valley. The humans set out, falling into a loose formation that looked casual but had clear sight lines and mutual support built in. The military veterans naturally took point and rear positions. The civilians settled into the middle. They moved at a steady pace, not rushing, not dawdling, just walking like they were on a particularly ambitious day hike. Behind them, through the observation cameras, Thex Rao and Shenvier watched in silence. "They're walking," Shenvier said. "Yes. Not running. Not utilizing cover. Just walking." "Yes." The Hectarians have already deployed forward scouts and established a defensive perimeter. The Vex have formed a phalanx formation with overlapping shield coverage. The Karathi are using meditative fast movement techniques. "Yes. The humans are walking. I'm aware." Shenvier was quiet for a moment. "Commander, I've served in 17 theaters across the quadrant. I've trained under 4 different martial philosophies. I've earned 7 combat distinctions. And I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. Welcome to my last 43 years of service. This is different. Everything is different with every species. The Hectarians think in terms of hive tactics. The Vex process as distributed intelligence. The Karathi approach combat as meditation. Every species brings their own logic. This isn't logic. What is this?" Thex Rao watched the humans disappear into the valley, moving at their steady, unhurried pace. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we're about to find out." In the valley, night was falling. The binary suns set on opposite horizons, creating a brief period of complete darkness before the planet's 3 moons rose. This was considered one of the most dangerous times in the Rust Valley. Visibility dropped to near zero. Temperature plummeted 40 degrees in minutes. The nocturnal predators emerged. The other species had prepared for this. The Hectarians had thermal vision. The Vex had distributed sensory nets. The Karathi could enter deep meditation that sharpened their remaining senses to preternatural levels. The humans pulled out flashlights. Actual flashlights. Handheld. Battery powered. The kind of thing most species hadn't used since they discovered bioluminescence or night vision technology 4,000 years ago. And they kept walking. Kai took point, his flashlight sweeping the terrain ahead. Santos brought up the rear, her light covering their back trail. The rest of the cohort spread out in pairs, lights overlapping to eliminate blind spots. "This is weird," Kai said, his voice carrying in the darkness. "This is objectively weird, right?" "Define weird," Yuki replied. She was using her scanner to map the terrain, its screen glow adding to the constellation of lights. "We're in a death valley on an alien planet with predators that can apparently survive plasma fire. And we're using flashlights and walking. And that seems insane. Only if you assume there's a better option. There are like 40 better options. We could have taken the plasma rifles. Plasma rifles need power cells. Power cells run out. Knives don't run out. Knives also don't shoot things. Knives also don't make noise or light that attracts attention." Santos called from the back. "Less talking, more walking. Sound carries." They walked in silence for another hour. The moons rose, adding their pale blue light to the landscape. The terrain was rough, all broken rock, and thermal vents that hissed steam at irregular intervals. Several times, they had to detour around fissures that dropped into darkness. Around hour 3, they encountered their first fauna. It came out of a thermal vent about 20 meters ahead. The creature looked like someone had taken a bear, a crocodile, and a nightmare, and then given the result anger management issues. 6 legs, chitinous armor plates, a mouth that opened sideways revealing 3 rows of teeth. The Academy files called it a rust mauler. Apex predator, territorial, aggressive, known to attack groups of up to 8 individuals. Plasma-resistant hide, preferred hunting method, ambush from underground. The humans stopped walking. The rust maulers stopped advancing. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then, Santos very calmly said, "Kai, Yuki, left flank, Chun, Ibrahim, right? Everyone else, tight formation. Nobody run, nobody scream. Slow movements." The cohort shifted, forming a rough circle, lights pointing outward. They looked bigger that way, more threatening. The rust mauler assessed this. It had evolved to hunt prey that ran or scattered or panicked. It had no protocols for prey that organized and stood its ground. It made a huffing sound that might have been confusion. Santos took one step forward. Just one. But it was deliberate. Confident. The kind of step that said, we're not running, and if you want to fight, we're going to make it expensive. The rust mauler huffed again. Then it turned and retreated into its thermal vent. The humans waited 30 seconds. Then they resumed walking. What just happened? Yuki asked. Predator calculus, Santos said. It was evaluating cost-benefit. We made ourselves look like the cost wasn't worth it. We stood still, and it ran away. Sometimes the best weapon is understanding what the other side wants. It wanted easy food. We weren't easy. So it wanted to find something easier. That won't work on everything. Nope. But it worked on that, and that's what mattered. They walked on through the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the night like small rebellions against the hostile planet. On the command deck, Fexral and Shenvier were watching the tactical display. Red icons marked all the cohort's positions. The Hectarians were making excellent time, but had already engaged hostile fauna 3 times, depleting ammunition. The Vex were moving slower, but more safely, their shield formations preventing attacks. The Karathi were fastest, but had split into smaller groups, a risky strategy. And the humans were just walking. They encountered a rust mauler, Shenvier said, reviewing the sensor logs. It withdrew without engagement. I saw that. Rust maulers don't withdraw. This one did. Why? I don't know. Shenvier studied the tactical display, her expression thoughtful. Commander, permission to speak freely? Granted. I think we made a mistake with the threat assessment. Explain. We evaluated the humans based on their physical capabilities. Strength, speed, durability. All metrics where they score below galactic average. But we didn't evaluate their strategic thinking, their behavioral adaptation, the way they assess and respond to threats. Every species has strategic thinking. Not like this. The Hectarians rely on superior firepower. The Vex rely on distributed intelligence. The Karathi rely on enhanced perception. All of them are using tools or abilities they evolved to possess. The humans aren't using tools. They're not using abilities. They're just adapting in real time to everything. That's not possible. And yeah, I'm watching them do it. Fexral didn't respond. He was watching the human cohort's icon move steadily across the tactical map, maintaining their walking pace, adjusting their route to avoid hazards, stopping to rest at regular intervals. It shouldn't work. By every military tactical doctrine he'd learned in 43 years of service, their approach should get them killed within the first day. But hour 12 came and went. Then, hour 18. The other cohorts were showing signs of stress. The Hectarians had lost 2 members to hostile fauna and terrain hazards. The Vex had fractured into 3 separate groups after a canyon forced them to split. The Karathi were down to 9 members, their fast movement technique burning energy faster than they could recover it. The humans kept walking. At hour 23, Santos called a halt. Rest break. 20 minutes. Eat something. Check your feet. Hydrate. The cohort settled into defensive positions, a practice routine they'd apparently done before. Some ate. Some checked equipment. Yuki ran her scanner and updated their route map. Kai sat next to Santos, working on a blister. You know this is insane, right? What's insane? This. All of this. We're having a picnic in a death valley. Would you prefer to be running and panicking? No, but don't you think we should be taking this more seriously? Santos looked at him. Really looked at him. Kai, how many extreme sports have you done? I don't know. A lot. And how many times have you died doing them? 0. Obviously. Right. Because you understand risk management. You know when to push and when to conserve. You know how to read conditions and adapt. You know that panic kills faster than the activity. This isn't different. This is just hiking with consequences. Hiking on a hostile alien planet is not the same as hiking in Yunnan. No, but the principles are the same. Watch where you step. Don't outpace your ability to recover. Respect the environment. And For the love of everything, don't panic. 20 minutes later, they started walking again. Hour 24. The binary suns rose, bringing their brutal heat. Temperature climbed from 15 degrees Celsius to 75 in under an hour. The thermal regulator suits kicked in, trying to compensate. They weren't designed for human physiology, so they didn't work quite right. The humans started sweating. Anyone else uncomfortably warm? Yuki asked. It's like summer in Lahore, someone replied. Or Phoenix in July. Or basically anywhere humans live, because we're apparently suicidal as a species. They kept walking. Hour 36. They'd crossed more than halfway through the valley. The beacon was visible on the far ridge, a pulsing light against the rust-colored mountains. Other cohorts were converging on the same goal. The Hectarians would arrive first at their current pace. The Vex were catching up. The Karathi were scattered, but some of their groups were moving fast. The humans maintained their steady pace. We could speed up, Kai suggested. Make better time. We could, Santos agreed. But then, we'd be exhausted when we arrive. And I don't know about you, but I like having energy reserves for unexpected situations. What kind of unexpected situations? As if in answer, the ground ahead of them exploded. Not metaphorically. Actually exploded. A geyser of superheated steam and rock fragments erupted from a thermal vent, showering the trail they'd been about to walk on. If they'd been moving faster, if they'd been running, they would have been right in the blast radius. The cohort stopped, looked at the crater, looked at each other. That kind of unexpected situation, Santos said. They detoured around the thermal vent and kept walking. Hour 48. 2/3 of the trial completed. The humans were tired but steady. Nobody was injured beyond minor blisters and sunburn. Their water was holding. Their food supplies were adequate. Their equipment was functional. On the command deck, the statistics were being compiled. The Hectarians, 33 survivors out of 40. The Vex, 19 survivors out of 25. The Karathi, 7 survivors out of 12. The humans, 32 out of 32. 0 casualties. 0 injuries requiring medical intervention. 0 emergency beacon activations. This isn't possible, the Academy's chief medical officer said, reviewing the biometric data. The stress levels. The fatigue markers. Everything is normal. Elevated, yes, but within healthy parameters. How are they not collapsing? Because they're walking, Shinvie said quietly. Not sprinting. Not pushing maximum performance. Just walking. That can't be the entire explanation. Can't it? Every other species is treating this as a combat trial. Maximum effort. Overwhelming force. The humans are treating it as what? A hike? An inconvenient commute? They're not fighting the valley. They're just coexisting with it. Thexral was running calculations on his command screen. Energy expenditure. Recovery rates. Projected arrival times. If they maintain current pace, he said slowly, they'll reach the beacon at hour 68. Well within the 72-hour limit. With energy reserves remaining. That's optimal performance. That's better than optimal. That shouldn't be possible for a species with their physical limitations. Unless the physical limitations aren't the limiting factor. Hour 68. The human cohort crested the final ridge. The beacon stood there, a 10-meter tower of metal and light, marking the end of the trial. The Hectarians had arrived 6 hours earlier. The Vex had straggled in over the last 4 hours. The Karathi had sent 3 members ahead who'd arrived 2 hours ago, with the rest still en route. And now the humans, all 32 of them, walking into the checkpoint zone like they'd just finished a pleasant afternoon stroll. Santos walked up to the checkpoint station and tapped the verification panel. The system registered their arrival. All 32 members accounted for. 0 casualties. 0 medical emergencies. The checkpoint officer, a Bravac different from the equipment distribution officer, but with the same expression of chronic concern, stared at his screen. You, all of you, you all made it. That was the objective, Santos said. Nobody makes it. Not intact. Not all of them. There are always casualties. Always. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything. The officer looked like he was having some kind of existential crisis. How? The rust maulers. The thermal vents. How did you? What did you? We walked, Santos said simply. Stayed together. Watched where we stepped. Took breaks. Drank water. You know, basic stuff. The officer opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. No sound came out. Behind Santos, the rest of the human cohort was settling into the checkpoint area, dropping packs, stretching sore muscles, comparing notes on the trail conditions like they were reviews on a hiking app. That canyon section was rough, Kai was saying. The loose scree nearly got me twice. The thermal vents were fascinating, Yuki added. The mineral deposits suggest a much more active geological system than the initial surveys indicated. On the command deck, Thexral was staring at the completion statistics in silence. Human cohort H7, trial completion time, 68 hours. Survival rate, 100%. Casualty rate, 0%. Emergency beacon activations, 0%. Medical interventions required, 0%. Equipment failures, 0%. Performance rating, exceptional. He'd been training soldiers for 43 years. He'd seen thousands of recruits face the Rust Valley trial. The best cohorts maybe managed 80% survival with moderate injuries and emergency extractions. The humans had just walked through it like it was a nature hike. Shinvier spoke first. Permission to revise the human threat assessment. Granted. What should I change it to? Thexral thought about this for a long time. I don't know, he finally said. But I think we need to stop thinking of them as a weak species and start thinking of them as something else. That's what we're going to spend the next 4 cycles figuring out. Down in the checkpoint area, the humans had started a small fire using scraps of dry plant material and were heating up their protein rations. It wasn't technically necessary. The food was edible cold, but apparently humans preferred their food warm, so they'd taken the extra effort to make it happen. Santos sat by the fire, cleaning her knife. She'd used it exactly twice during the entire trial. Once to cut a stuck strap on someone's pack. Once to dig out a splinter. She hadn't fired a single plasma bolt or activated a single defensive shield or done any of the things the Academy had assumed would be necessary for survival. She just walked and helped people and kept the group together. And somehow that had been enough. Hey Sarge, Kai said, settling down next to her. You think the next trial will be harder? Santos smiled. Oh, definitely. You looking forward to it? Kai, I was bored before I got here. This is finally interesting. Across the checkpoint area, the Hectarian commander who'd called them undisciplined prey species was watching them with what might have been respect or might have been the Hectarian equivalent of complete confusion. The Vex Collective was processing the data from the trial, trying to understand how a species with no enhanced attributes had outperformed groups with superior strength, distributed intelligence, and energy shields. The Karathi who'd survived just watched and said nothing. But they were thinking the same thing they'd thought on the landing pad. The prey that acts like a predator either knows something or has nothing left to lose. They were starting to suspect it was the first option, and that terrified them more than any rust mauler ever could. Because if the humans knew something, if they understood something about survival that the rest of the galaxy had missed, then everything the Academy thought it knew about training soldiers was about to be questioned. And questioning 43 years of established doctrine was never comfortable. But comfortable wasn't the point of the Garrison Academy. The point was survival. And the humans had just taught a masterclass in it without firing a single shot. The night settled over the checkpoint area. The binary sun set. The moons rose. And in the darkness, 32 humans sat around their small fire, sharing stories and laughing about the absurdity of walking across a death valley with nothing but knives and determination. Somewhere in the command center, Thexral made a final note in his log. Human cohort H7 has completed first trial with unprecedented success. Recommend immediate escalation of subsequent trials to properly assess capabilities. Current threat models appear insufficient. He paused. Then, added, alternative hypothesis. The humans aren't adapting to the Academy. The Academy isn't dangerous enough for the humans. Recommend consultation with Xenopsychology Department and evolutionary biology specialists. Something about this species doesn't match any known patterns. He filed a report, and in doing so, he set in motion a chain of events that would eventually force the entire Galactic military consortium to completely rebuild their understanding of what made a species dangerous. But that was still 3 trials and several existential crises away. For now, the humans just sat by their fire and enjoyed the warmth. Because that's what humans did. They found ways to make hostile environments a little bit less hostile. And they did it with knives, flashlights, and the kind of stubborn optimism that most species mistake for insanity right up until they realize it's actually competence wearing a very misleading disguise. The second trial was announced 3 days after the Rust Valley exercise ended. 3 days during which the human cohort had become something of a minor sensation in the Academy complex. Not famous, not celebrated, just noticed. The kind of notice that came from doing something nobody expected and then acting like it wasn't a big deal. Other species started observing them during meal periods. The Academy cafeteria was organized by species requirements, different atmospheric compositions, and dietary needs accommodated in separate zones. The humans ate in the standard oxygen-nitrogen section, which they shared with about 40% of the other recruits. They sat together, mostly, though a few had started joining mixed species tables. Kai ended up sitting across from a Hectarian scout named Crixthal during morning meal on day 2. The conversation started because Kai accidentally grabbed the wrong hydration packet and ended up with something that tasted like battery acid mixed with despair. Crixthal's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The translator picked it up. Human, you took a Hectarian supplement. That'll make you sick. Kai looked at the packet, then at his cup, then at Crixthal. How sick? For us? Energizing. For you? Your digestive system will attempt to exit your body through any available opening. That's not ideal. Kai set down the cup very carefully. Thanks for the warning. You should be more careful. Many things here can kill you. Even the food. Pretty sure the food can kill you too. That's kind of the point of this place, right? Everything is dangerous. Crixthal paused, tilted his head in that way species with exoskeletons did when they were confused. You say this like it's normal. I mean, yeah, dangerous food is just food you have to be careful with. We have plants on Earth that'll kill you if you prepare them wrong. Fish that'll paralyze you. Mushrooms that'll shut down your liver. You just learn what's safe and what's not. But you're not afraid of food? Nah, you just pay attention. Crixthal's translator made a sound like buffering. Then, your species is very strange. We get that a lot. That conversation got repeated in various forms across the Academy. The humans were strange, but they weren't weak. And that combination was making a lot of species recalculate their assumptions. The Vex Collective had a longer conversation with Yuki in the technical library. She'd been researching the Academy's environmental systems, because apparently downtime for Yuki meant learn everything about the infrastructure. The Vex approached as a unit, 5 individuals moving in perfect synchronization. Their translator was smoother than most, the hive mind consciousness producing more natural speech patterns. Human Yuki. Query. Your species survival strategy. Clarify. Yuki looked up from her datapad. Can you be more specific? The Rust Valley trial. Your cohort employed no advanced tactics. No superior firepower. No enhanced biological capabilities. Yet you achieved optimal results. The collective cannot model this outcome. Explain your methodology. We walk. Insufficient data. Walking alone does not explain zero casualty completion. Okay, but we also stayed together. Conserved energy. Avoided unnecessary risks. Helped each other. Used our tools efficiently. Paid attention to our environment. Yuki paused. Is that not standard procedure? The Vex was silent for a moment. Their distributed consciousness processing. Standard military doctrine emphasizes speed, force projection, and individual capability. Your methods emphasize none of these. Well, maybe that's why they work. We're not trying to fight the environment. We're trying to exist within it. There's a difference. Elaborate. Yuki thought about how to explain this. Okay, so, most species here seem to approach challenges as obstacles to overcome through superior capability. You're stronger, so you push through. You're faster, so you outrun the danger. You have better weapons, so you shoot the problem. Right? Correct. But humans, we're not stronger or faster or better equipped. We're actually kind of mediocre at most things. So we can't rely on being superior. We have to rely on being adaptable. We look at a problem and think, how do we work with this instead of how do we beat this? This seems inefficient. Maybe, but it means we don't exhaust ourselves fighting battles we don't need to fight. The rust mauler? We didn't have to kill it. We just had to make it not worth its time to attack us. The thermal vents? We didn't have to disable them. We just had to walk around them. The whole trial wasn't about defeating the valley. It was about crossing it. We crossed it. The Vex processed this. Your strategic framework operates on minimal necessary action rather than maximum possible force. Yeah, basically, why use more energy than you need to? Because overwhelming force ensures victory. Unless it exhausts you before you reach the objective, then it ensures defeat. The Vex collective swayed slightly, their bodies shifting in unison as they considered this. The collective will integrate this data. Your perspective is unusual. Thanks. It was not a compliment. But it was also not an insult. We are uncertain. This is also unusual. They left, moving in their synchronized formation, and Yuki went back to studying the Academy's power distribution systems with the kind of focus that suggested she was either really into engineering or planning something elaborate. Probably both. The Karathi had a different kind of conversation with Santos. It happened in the training courtyard during free practice time. Santos was running through a hand-to-hand combat form. Nothing fancy, just maintenance work to keep her muscle memory sharp. One of the surviving Karathi, a warrior monk named Shunvia's younger brother Talvik, watched for a while before approaching. Your form is defensive, he observed. Santos finished her sequence, breathing steady. Usually is. The Karathi teach that the best defense is to end the threat before it manifests. The Brazilian Special Forces teach that the best defense is to not get hit while you figure out how to end the threat. These are not the same philosophy. Nope. Talvik demonstrated a strike sequence. Fast, precise, built around the Karathi enhanced perception. Strikes landing in gaps that most species wouldn't even see. We train to perceive the opening and exploit it instantly. That works if you're faster than your opponent. We are always faster. Our meditative states accelerate our perception. What happens when you meet something faster than your meditation? Talvik post. That has never happened. Yet, you believe it will. I believe the galaxy is a big place and full of surprises. Santos moved through another sequence, slower than Talvik's, but with a different kind of efficiency. Every movement had a purpose. Nothing wasted. You're training to be the fastest thing in the room. We're training to survive even when we're not. This seems pessimistic. This seems realistic. Humans aren't the strongest or the fastest or the toughest. We're just persistent and creative and really, really good at not dying even when we probably should. Is this why you took knives instead of plasma rifles? Partly. Also, plasma rifles are heavy and need maintenance and make a lot of noise. Knives are quiet, lightweight, and don't run out of battery. Sometimes the simple tool is the right tool. Talvik considered this. May I train with you? Sure. But I should warn you, my style is going to be way less impressive than yours. Perhaps. But you survived the Rust Valley with 0 casualties while my cohort lost 5 members. Perhaps impressive is not the same as effective. They trained together for the next hour. Talvik learned that Santos' defensive style wasn't about being passive. It was about forcing opponents to commit to attacks that created openings for counters. It was about making the other person work harder while you conserved energy. It was about surviving long enough to find a solution. By the end, Talvik had a new appreciation for the difference between fast and efficient. And Santos had made a friend, which was good because the Academy was about to test whether friendship mattered more than species loyalty. The second trial briefing happened in the main assembly hall. The space was massive, designed to hold 3,000 recruits during full Academy cycles. Currently, it held about 200 survivors from the first trial. The mortality rate was holding steady at historical averages, except for the humans. They were still at 100% survival. Commander Thexral stood on the central platform, his scaled form imposing under the harsh lighting. The assembly hall went silent when he activated his translator. Second trial begins in 12 standard hours. Designation: Urban Combat Scenario. You will be deployed into a simulated city environment. The city has been seeded with hostile forces, environmental hazards, and strategic objectives. Your mission is to secure 3 high-value targets and extract them to the designated safe zone. Time limit: 48 hours. He paused, letting the whispers die down. This trial will not be conducted in species cohorts. You will be assigned to mixed tactical units of 10 members each. Species diversity is intentional. You will learn to operate with beings who think differently, communicate differently, and fight differently. Unit cohesion is not optional. It is survival. The assembly hall erupted in agitated sounds. Mandible clicking, hive mind buzzing, meditative breathing disrupted. Every species had trained to work with their own kind. Mixing them was like asking people who spoke different languages to write poetry together without translation software. Thexral waited for silence. The assignments are final. The tactical units have been calculated by the Academy AI for optimal challenge and growth. You will meet your unit members in 1 hour in the designated briefing rooms. Dismissed. The assembly dispersed, species grouping together to discuss this new complication. The humans gathered near the exit, Santos doing a quick head count. Okay, she said. So we're getting split up. Probably 3 or 4 humans per unit, mixed with other species. This is going to be interesting. Interesting like educational experience or interesting like probable disaster? Kai asked. Yes. That's not helpful. Wasn't trying to be helpful. I was trying to be accurate. Yuki was already on her datapad, pulling up the tactical unit rosters that had just been posted. We've got. Okay. Unit 7 has Santos, Kai, Chun, and myself. Plus 2 Hectarians, 2 Vex, 1 Karathi, and 1. 1 Dravik. What's a Dravik? Chun asked. He was former Chinese Special Forces, spoke 4 languages, and had the kind of calm demeanor that came from too many years dealing with situations where calm was the only thing preventing disaster. Heavy world species. High gravity adaptation. Thick hide. Strong. Slow, but durable. They're usually deployed as shock troops or defensive positions. Great. So we've got speed, strength, durability, and for humans who are none of those things. With a coordination, Santos said. Every unit needs someone who can see the whole picture while everyone else is specialized. That's usually our job. How do you know that's our job? Because everyone else is too busy being good at their specific thing to worry about how everyone else is doing. Humans have to worry about everything because we can't rely on being good at any one thing. So we got good at connecting dots. Unit 7 assembled in Briefing Room C, a space that smelled like anxiety and recycled air. The room was designed for mixed-species meetings, with adjustable atmosphere controls and furniture that could accommodate everything from Hectarian height to Dravik bulk. The 2 Hectarians arrived first. The one called Crixthal, who'd warned Kai about the hydration packet, and another named Velshaw, who moved with the precision of a dedicated soldier. The 2 Vex came as a pair, always did, their hive mind connection apparently stronger when they stayed close. The Karathi was Talvik, who nodded at Santos when he entered. The Dravik was last, having to duck through the doorway, even though it had been enlarged for exactly this purpose. Her name was Thorn, and she looked like someone had carved a boulder into the rough shape of a humanoid, and then given it a bad attitude and worse posture. Gray hide, 4 arms, eyes that glowed faintly orange. She moved like an avalanche that had decided to take its time. Everyone found places to sit or stand. The room was silent. Awkward. Nobody knew how to start this conversation. Finally, Kai just said, "So, we're Unit 7. E." Krikstal's mandibles clicked. The human acknowledges the obvious. Someone had to start talking. Why? Because sitting in silence is uncomfortable. Comfort is irrelevant to mission success. Maybe, but comfort affects performance. Uncomfortable soldiers make mistakes. Velsha, the other Hectarian, spoke up. Her voice was different than Krikstal's, lighter, more modulated. The human has a point. Team cohesion requires communication. We should establish command structure and tactical roles. Agreed, said one of the Vex. The two of them spoke in alternating sentences, finishing each other's thoughts. Unit composition analysis. 2 heavy assault. 2 fast strike. 2 distributed intelligence. 2 enhanced perception. 4 uncertain. The humans do not fit standard tactical categories. With a flexible support, Santos said, we adapt to whatever the situation needs. Elaborate. You too, she pointed at the Hectarians, are probably frontline combat. Heavy weapons, coordinated strikes, hold positions. Thorn, nodding at the Dravik, your defensive anchor and siege breaker. Talvik, fast response and reconnaissance. You too, indicating the Vex, tactical processing and coordination. The humans fill whatever gaps appear. Need someone to flank? We flank. Need someone to hold equipment? We hold. Need someone to try something stupid because all the smart options failed? We're excellent at stupid. The room was quiet for a moment. Then, Thorn spoke for the first time. Her voice was like rocks grinding together, deep and slow. You claim to have no specialty. Yet your species completed the first trial with 0 casualties. This suggests hidden capability. Not hidden, just different. We're not good at any one thing. We're okay at most things. That's the capability. Adaptability. Adaptability is not a combat skill. Sure it is. Combat is just problem solving with violence. The better you adapt, the better you solve. Krikstal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation or thought. The human proposes a non-hierarchical tactical approach. This contradicts Hectarian doctrine. We require clear command structure. Okay, Santos said. Then let's vote on it. Who wants to lead? Silence. Everyone looked at each other. Right, Santos continued. Because leadership in a mixed unit is complicated. Different species have different priorities. So maybe we try distributed leadership. Combat situations, Hectarians call it since you got the firepower and training. Technical problems, Vex handles it because distributed intelligence. Defensive positions, Thorn decides. Fast response, Talvik. The humans mostly just make suggestions and try not to die. This is unusual, Velsha said slowly, but logical. Species-specific expertise deployed contextually. Exactly. Play to strengths. Cover weaknesses. Stay flexible. The Vex swayed. Acceptable framework. Preliminary assessment. Unit 7 has probability of success higher than random assignment would suggest. The human's coordination instinct may compensate for species diversity challenges. Was that a compliment? Kai whispered to Chun. I think so. Hard to tell with hive minds. I heard that, both Vex said simultaneously. Hive minds have excellent hearing. The briefing continued for another hour. They reviewed the mission parameters. Secure 3 high-value targets. Extract to safe zone. 48-hour limit. The simulated city would have hostile forces that would actively hunt them. Environmental hazards. Limited resources. Standard nightmare scenario designed to test everything they'd learned. The twist was that the high-value targets were also being pursued by other units. So it wasn't just surviving the environment and hostiles. It was competing with other Academy recruits for the same objectives. Great, Kai said. So we're fighting the city, the enemies, and each other. Welcome to actual warfare, Krikstal said. Resources are always contested. Has anyone done analysis on the other units? Yuki asked. She'd been quiet, listening, taking notes on her datapad. Why would we? Talvik said. We focus on our own performance. But if we know what the other units are capable of, we can predict their strategies and avoid direct conflict. Work smarter, not harder. The Vex perked up. The small humans suggest intelligence gathering as tactical advantage. Well, yeah, information is useful. This is not standard academy doctrine. We are taught to train for direct confrontation. Sure, but why fight when you can outmaneuver? Because fighting tests strength, and outmaneuvering tests intelligence. Why is one better than the other? The Vex swayed in that way they did when processing complex data. The small human makes concerning sense. We will collaborate on intelligence analysis. By the time the briefing ended, Unit 7 had something resembling a plan. Rough, flexible, built around the idea that they'd figure out the details as situations developed, which was either brilliant tactical thinking or catastrophic failure waiting to happen. Probably both. 12 hours later, they deployed into the simulated city. The city was called Nexus 9, a fabricated urban environment built inside one of Garrison Prime's massive training domes. 3 square kilometers of buildings, streets, underground tunnels, and vertical spaces. The architecture was deliberately mixed, pulling from dozens of different species' urban design philosophies. Nothing was familiar. Everything was slightly wrong. The sky above was simulated, a projection that showed perpetual twilight. The lighting was bad enough to make targeting difficult, but not so bad that it qualified as darkness. The temperature was set to uncomfortable, cycling between too hot and too cold at irregular intervals. Perfect conditions for maximum stress. Unit 7 deployed from Drop Point Gamma, a rooftop position on the edge of the urban zone. The moment they hit the roof, Santos started scanning. Okay, high-value target locations are marked on our tactical maps, but they won't stay static. They'll move, probably try to evade capture. We need to prioritize which one to grab first. Closest target is 800 meters northeast, Talvik said, his enhanced perception already mapping movement patterns. But I sense heavy activity in that direction, other units converging. So that's going to be a fight, Chen observed. Then we avoid it, Yuki said. She'd pulled up a 3-dimensional map of the city on her datapad. Target 2 is farther, but in a lower traffic area. Industrial zone. Fewer good approach vectors, which means fewer units competing. Industrial zones have more environmental hazards, one of the Vex noted. Machinery. Unstable structures. Higher casualty risk, but lower combat risk, Yuki countered. And we're better at handling environmental hazards than direct firefights. The unit looked at Santos. She shrugged. Makes sense to me. We're not equipped for a straight fight against units with better weapons. But we can handle dangerous terrain. Let's go for target 2. They moved out, and immediately the differences in species capabilities became apparent. The Hectarians wanted to take street-level routes with clear sight lines. The Vex wanted to use underground tunnels where their distributed intelligence gave them advantage. Talvik wanted to go over the rooftops for speed. Thorn just wanted to walk through buildings if they got in her way. The humans suggested they split into sub-teams and converge on the target from multiple angles. That divides our force, Crixthal protested. It also makes us harder to track, and gives us multiple fallback options if one approach fails, Chin said. And if one team gets engaged, the others can flank or extract, Santos added. They argued about this for 3 minutes, which felt like hours when you're standing exposed on a rooftop in a combat zone. Finally, Velshaw cut through the debate. We are wasting time. Split approach tactics are acceptable. Maintain calm discipline. If any team encounters overwhelming force, signal and withdraw. We reunite at the target location. They split. Hectarians and Thorn took the street level, using Thorn's bulk as mobile cover. Vex took the underground with Talvik, his enhanced perception useful in the tunnels. The 4 humans took the rooftops, because humans had apparently decided that being higher than necessary was always a good strategy. Kai, Chun, Yuki, and Santos moved across the rooftop network, jumping gaps, climbing access ladders, staying low. The city spread out below them, a maze of hostile territory and unknown threats. This is insane, Kai muttered, leaping across a 3-meter gap to the next building. We're doing parkour in a war zone. Parkour is just aggressive walking, Santos said. You've been walking for days. This is fine. Walking doesn't involve falling to my death if I miss a jump. Then don't miss. They reached an observation point overlooking the industrial sector. Yuki set up her scanner, running electromagnetic sweeps for the target's beacon signature. Got something, she said. Target 2 is in that facility. She pointed to a large warehouse structure, half collapsed, with exposed machinery and what looked like some kind of chemical processing equipment. But there's movement. Other units. Chun pulled out basic optical enhancers, scanning the area. Can't tell. Could be hostiles. Could be environmental hazards. Could be both. Let's find out, Santos said. She activated her comm. Unit 7, this is Santos. We have eyes on target 2. Facility is compromised, multiple possible contacts. Requesting status. Velshaw's voice came back. Street team is 2 minutes from your position. Proceeding with caution. Multiple hostile signatures detected. The Vex reported next. Tunnel team has encountered resistance. Engaging automated defense systems. Will be delayed. Acknowledged, Santos said. Humans are moving in for close reconnaissance. Stand by. They descended from the rooftop using a combination of ladders, drainage pipes, and what Shin optimistically called controlled falling. The warehouse grew larger as they approached, its damaged walls showing scorch marks and blast patterns from whatever training scenario had last used this facility. The entrance was a massive bay door, half open, leading into darkness. Security systems were offline or destroyed. Warning signs in multiple languages decorated the walls, all of them variations on danger and authorized personnel only. Pretty sure we're not authorized personnel, Kai whispered. Pretty sure nobody is, Santos replied. Yuki, anything on the scanner? Lots of electromagnetic interference. Whatever machinery is in there is still active. I'm also picking up. Wait. She adjusted her scanner. Biological signatures. Multiple. Moving patterns suggest sentient awareness, not random fauna. So, hostiles. Or another unit. Or both. They entered the warehouse, weapons ready. The humans had upgraded from knives to basic kinetic pistols for this trial, but they still carried the knives because apparently humans couldn't let go of pointy objects even when they had better options. The interior was a mess. Machinery loomed in the darkness, all pipes and chains and industrial equipment that probably had specific purposes but currently just served as obstacles and cover. The air smelled like oil and ozone and something organic that had gone bad. Movement ahead. Que signalet pointing. The unit moved into cover positions, each of them taking different angles to create overlapping fields of fire without blocking each other. A figure emerged from behind a processing tank. Humanoid, roughly, wearing Academy combat armor marked with hostile force designation. One of the simulated enemy combatants. It spotted them. Raised a weapon. Chun fired first. 3 shots. Center mass. The hostile went down, its armor registering the hits and triggering the casualty simulation. The figure went limp, effectively removed from the scenario. Contact, Chun reported calmly into the comm, 1 hostile down. Expect more. More came. For more hostiles converged from different directions, their tactics suggesting coordinated intelligence rather than simple programming. They used cover effectively, suppressing fire to pin targets. Attempted flanking maneuvers. The humans scattered, each one taking a different position, creating a defensive triangle that covered all approaches. They didn't try to win through firepower. They just made themselves difficult targets while creating clear zones of fire. Santos dropped another hostile. Kai clipped one that was trying to flank, slowing it enough for Chun to finish it. Yuki stayed on the scanner, calling out positions. 3 more east side. 2 on the catwalks above. 1. Wait. That's not a hostile. That's the target. The high-value target was a simulated civilian, programmed to act confused and scared, hiding behind equipment while the firefight raged around it. Standard rescue scenario. complicated by the fact that reaching it meant exposing themselves to the hostiles on the catwalks. Ideas, Santos said, dropping into cover as plasma bolts scorched the air where she'd been standing. We need to clear the catwalks, Chen said. Can't get a good angle from here. Then we need height. Kai looked around, spotted a maintenance ladder leading to an upper level. I can get up there. That's exposed. So we make it less exposed. Cover me for 30 seconds. Santos and Chen opened fire, not trying to hit anything, just making noise and light to draw attention. Yuki stayed on her scanner, tracking targets. Kai moved, fast, climbing the ladder with the kind of speed that came from years of scrambling up rock faces and tree obstacles. He reached the upper catwalk. 2 hostiles turned to engage. Kai didn't try to shoot them. Instead, he pulled a smoke grenade from his kit, something they grabbed during equipment distribution, and tossed it between them. Smoke billowed. Visibility dropped to 0. The hostiles' targeting systems confused by the interference. Chun capitalized, moving forward with Santos providing cover. They reached the target's position, a young Bravak programmed to look terrified, and Chun scooped it up in a fireman's carry. Got the package. Moving to extraction. The street team arrived just as they exited the warehouse, Thorn bulldozing through a sidewall, because apparently doors were optional when you weighed half a ton and had 4 arms. Target secured? Velshaw asked. 1 of 3, Santos confirmed. We need to move. Other units will have heard the engagement. They moved. Fast but controlled. Thorn took point, absorbing incoming fire with her armored hide. The Hectarians provided covering fire. The humans moved the target through the center of the formation, protected on all sides. They'd gone maybe 200 meters when the tunnel team emerged from a maintenance access, Talvik, and the Vex looking somewhat scorched but functional. Automated defenses? Santos asked. Plasma turrets, 1 the Vex confirmed. 3 disabled. 1 bypass hacked. Route is now secure if we need alternate extraction. Good. Everyone accounted for. Any injuries? Minor burns. Nothing serious. Unit 7 moved through the city like an organism with 11 bodies and 1 brain, each member covering their specialty, communication flowing smoothly. When they encountered another hostile patrol, the Hectarians engaged while everyone else took alternate routes. When they hit a collapsed building blocking their path, Thorn just climbed over it carrying the target while everyone else found ways around. They reached the safe zone checkpoint 40 minutes later, deposited target 1, and immediately started planning their approach to target 2. This time they had information. They knew which units were competing. They knew which areas were most contested. They knew the hostile force patterns. They planned accordingly. Target 2 took 3 hours to secure because another unit had gotten there first. Unit 12, all Karathi, using their meditation techniques to move faster than Unit 7 could track. It became a chess game. Units maneuvering around each other, trying to secure position without triggering direct combat. Finally, Yuki had an idea. What if we don't compete? Explain, the Vex said. Target 2 is moving, right? Trying to evade capture. So both units are hunting it. But what if we cooperate? Share tracking data. Converge from multiple angles. Whoever gets there first secures it, but both units get credit for the tactical coordination. Is that allowed? Kai asked. Nothing in the rules says we can't cooperate with other units. Nothing says we can either. So we're in a gray area. Perfect place for humans. They proposed it to Unit 12. The Karathi were skeptical, but practical. They agreed to share tracking data for 10 minutes. If one unit secured the target, the other would provide covering fire during extraction. It worked. Unit 12 secured target 2. Unit 7 provided suppressing fire against hostiles while they extracted. Both units withdrew without casualties. Commander Thexral, watching from the control room, made a note in his log. Units 7 and 12 have demonstrated inter-unit cooperation despite competitive scenario design. This was not anticipated. Human influence suspected. Monitor for pattern replication. Target 3 took the remaining time. Every unit in the scenario converged on its location, creating a multi-faction combat situation that devolved into chaos. 16 different tactical units, all trying to secure one target, all trying to avoid killing each other while fighting hostile forces and environmental hazards. Unit 7 didn't try to win. They waited, watched, let everyone else exhaust themselves. When 3 units were pinned down in a firefight and the target was briefly unguarded, Talvik simply walked in, grabbed it, and walked out while everyone was distracted. They extracted to the safe zone with 6 hours to spare. Unit 7 was the 3rd team to complete all objectives. But they were the only team to do it without casualties. And they were the only team that had actively coordinated with another unit instead of competing. The after-action briefing was interesting. Commander Thexral stood before the assembled survivors, his expression unreadable. Unit 7, step forward. The 11 members of Unit 7 moved to the front. They looked tired, scorched in places. Yuki had a cut on her forehead from debris. Thorn was missing a chunk of her armored hide. But they were all intact, all functional. Your performance was unorthodox, Thexral said. Thank you, Santos replied. That was not a compliment. Wasn't sure. Tone is hard to read across species. You cooperated with Unit 12 instead of competing. Yes, sir. The scenario was designed to foster competition. The scenario was designed to test tactical thinking. We thought tactically. Cooperation was more efficient than competition. Efficiency is not the same as victory. We completed all objectives with 0 casualties ahead of the deadline. That sounds like victory. Thexral was quiet for a long moment. Then, he turned to address the full assembly. Unit 7 has demonstrated that doctrine is not law. Tactics are not scripture. Every scenario has multiple solutions. The Academy teaches you specific methodologies because they work. But work is not the same as optimal. He paused. Unit 7 found an optimal solution by ignoring conventional wisdom. This is acceptable. Military history is full of victories won by those who understood when to break the rules. However, his gaze fixed on Santos. Breaking rules requires understanding what the rules are trying to accomplish. Unit 7 understood. They bent methodology, but fulfilled objectives. This is innovation. Do not confuse it with rebellion. Innovation serves the mission. Rebellion serves the ego. Learn the difference. Santos nodded. Understood, sir. Dismissed. The units dispersed. Unit 7 walked together back to their quarters, the mixed species group drawing attention. Nobody had seen a unit maintain cohesion after the trial ended. Usually species separated back to their comfortable groupings. Unit 7 apparently hadn't gotten that memo. So, Kai said as they walked, we're a team now. Apparently, Crick's Thal clicked. This is not terrible. High praise from a Hectarian, Chen observed. We do not give praise lightly. We noticed. Velsha made a sound that might have been laughter. The humans grow on you, like a fungus. Annoying at first. Eventually you stop noticing. Then, you realize you function better with them present. Did you just compare us to fungus? Fungus serves important ecological functions. That's still not a compliment. It was not meant to be. They reached the quarters, split to their respective species sections to clean up and rest. But they made plans to meet for the evening meal. Together. Mixed table. This was noticed. Other recruits watched Unit 7 with something between curiosity and confusion. Species mixing during mandatory team scenarios was one thing. Choosing to mix during personal time was something else. The cafeteria was quieter than usual that evening. People watched Unit 7, trying to understand what they were seeing. 2 Hectarians, notorious for species loyalty. 2 Vex, who typically only associated with other Vex collectives. 1 Karathi, whose culture emphasized individual meditation and personal excellence. 1 Dravik, famously antisocial and preferring solitude. And for humans, who were already strange but now seemed to be spreading their strangeness to other species. They sat together, shared food, carefully checking species compatibility, told stories, laughed, argued about tactics, made plans for the next trial. And slowly, other units started to do the same. Unit 12, the Karathi who'd worked with Unit 7, joined a mixed table. Then Unit 8. Then Unit 3. By the end of the meal period, the cafeteria looked different. Species weren't segregated as strictly. Conversations were crossing traditional boundaries. Tactical knowledge was being shared. The Academy's instructional staff watched this with varying degrees of concern and interest. The humans are changing the social dynamics, Shunvier observed from the instructor's gallery. Social dynamics are not our concern, Thexral said. Combat performance is our concern. Combat performance is influenced by social dynamics. You know this, Commander. Yes, but I don't know if this is a positive influence or a negative one. Unit 7's performance suggests positive. 1 unit. 1 trial. Insufficient data. Then, we continue to monitor. We continue to monitor, Thexral agreed. And we escalate the difficulty. The 3rd trial? We'll test whether their cooperative approach survives genuine hardship. Social cohesion is easy when everyone succeeds. We need to see what happens when they fail. You're going to design a scenario they can't win. I'm going to design a scenario where winning is possible, but extremely costly. Where every choice has consequences. Where cooperation might be actively detrimental to survival. Then, we'll see if their methods hold. Shimba Nudda. You're testing whether they're adaptable or just lucky. Exactly. And if they're adaptable, then we have a problem. Problem. Because it means the Academy's entire training methodology has been optimized for species who rely on specific advantages. Strength, speed, enhanced biology. We've never had to design training for a species whose advantage is that they have no advantages. They force themselves to be adaptable because they had no other choice. That's not something we can train into other species. That's evolutionary psychology. So what do? We test them. We push them. We see where they break. And if they don't break, then we learn from them. In the cafeteria, the humans had no idea they were being discussed. They were too busy teaching Krixthal how to play poker with improvised cards made from ration packets. He was terrible at it, but he was learning. And learning, as it turned out, was the most dangerous thing you could do in the Garrison Academy. Because learning meant change. And change meant everything the Academy thought it knew was open to question. The 3rd trial would come in 5 days. 5 days for the instructors to design a scenario specifically calculated to break the cooperative methods Unit 7 had pioneered. 5 days for the humans to rest, train, and continue spreading their bizarre philosophy that the best way to survive wasn't to be stronger or faster or better. It was to be flexible, creative, and willing to help the person next to you even if they had mandibles and you had skin. 5 days that would determine whether the file mistake that sent humans to Garrison Prime was the greatest accident in military training history, or the beginning of something nobody had anticipated. A revolution, not of weapons or tactics or technology, but a philosophy. The idea that survival wasn't about individual superiority. It was about collective adaptation. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave that idea to the species that had spent their entire evolutionary history proving that cooperation beats competition when the environment is trying to kill you. They'd survived ice ages, predators, plagues, natural disasters, resource scarcity. They'd survived by working together even when it made no logical sense. Even when their biology said compete. Their culture said cooperate. And now they were teaching that culture to species who'd never needed it before. The Academy was about to have a very educational experience, and it was absolutely not ready for it. The 3rd trial briefing came with weather warnings. Actual weather warnings. The kind that made even the instructors look concerned. Garrison Prime was experiencing a stellar storm. Both binary suns were ejecting massive solar flares, creating electromagnetic interference that would disrupt most communications and sensor equipment. The atmospheric interaction was producing thermal inversions, pressure differentials, and wind patterns that made flight operations hazardous even for species with natural flight capability. Perfect training conditions, according to the Academy's philosophy of if it's not trying to kill you, it's not trying hard enough. Commander Thexral stood before the assembled recruits, his scales catching the harsh emergency lighting that had replaced the normal illumination systems. The main power grid was being affected by the storm. Backup systems were active. Everything felt unstable. Third, trial designation. Strategic survival under adversity. You will be deployed in your assigned tactical units to separate locations across the northern wasteland. Each unit will receive different objectives. Some objectives will be critical. Some will be diversions. You will not know which is which until you complete them or fail. He paused, letting that sink in. The storm will disable most electronic equipment. Your comms will be limited to short range only. Your sensors will be unreliable. Your navigation systems may fail entirely. You will be operating with minimal technological support in an environment that is actively hostile. Your time limit is 72 hours. Your objectives are marked on hard copy maps you will receive at deployment. Questions? Silence. Then, one of the Vex units raised what might have been a hand. Clarify. Minimal technological support. Define minimal. You will have basic comms, basic shelter systems, basic survival equipment, no sensors, no long-range communications, no automated threat detection, no tactical overlay maps, no AI assistance. You will navigate by landmarks. You will assess threats manually. You will make decisions without algorithmic support. The assembly erupted in agitated sounds. Most species in the Academy had grown up with technology integrated into every aspect of their training. Remove that technology, and you removed a fundamental part of their tactical capability. The humans looked at each other. Then Kai raised his hand. Yes, human. Sir, just to clarify, we're going to use paper maps and visual navigation. Correct. And we're making decisions without AI support. Correct. That's just how we did things like 50 years ago. The assembly went quiet. Every species turning to look at the humans. Thexral's expression might have been surprise. Might have been indigestion. Hard to tell with VRYNN facial structure. Elaborate. Humans only got reliable personal AI systems about 2 generations ago. Before that we just used paper maps, looked at stars, asked for directions, made our best guess, and hope we didn't get lost. We're pretty good at low-tech navigation. Your species navigated without technological assistance until recently. Some places on Earth still do it that way. The technology is expensive. Remote areas can't always get reliable signal. So you learn backup methods. Just in case. I see. Thexral made a note. Then, continue the briefing. Deployment in 2 hours. Prepare your equipment. Understand your maps. Establish unit contingency plans. Dismissed. Unit 7 gathered in their briefing room. The moment the door closed, Velshaw turned to Santos. The humans can navigate without technology. Some of us, Santos said. Not all. Is this a common skill? Common enough. Military training still covers it. Some civilian outdoor activities require it. It's not exotic. It's just backup knowledge. Krixthal clicked his mandibles rapidly. This trial was designed to disadvantage all species equally. But it disadvantages humans less than others. Maybe, Chen said. Or maybe it just advantages different skills. We're not better navigators than species with enhanced perception. We're just practiced at a different kind of navigation. This semantic difference is irrelevant, one of the Vex said. The practical outcome is that humans possess training specific to this trial's constraints. This creates tactical imbalance. So we teach you, Yuki said simply. We've got 2 hours. Basics of map reading, compass navigation, landmark identification, and visual dead reckoning. Won't make you experts, but it'll make you functional. You would share this knowledge? Talvik asked. Why wouldn't we? Because it reduces your advantage. Our advantage doesn't help if the rest of the unit can't function. We succeed together or we fail separately. Those are the options. The unit looked at each other. Cross-species glances that contained entire conversations compressed into moments. Then, Thorn rumbled, acceptable. Teach us human navigation. The next 2 hours were chaotic education. The humans broke out paper maps from their personal supplies, drew diagrams, explained concepts like triangulation and back-azimuth and terrain association, demonstrated how to use the sun's position for directional orientation, showed them tricks for distance estimation. The other species struggled with concepts that humans found basic. The idea of estimating distance by counting steps seemed absurd to beings who had always relied on sensors. The concept of using terrain features for navigation confused species who'd grown up with digital overlay maps. But they learned. Because they had to. Because the alternative was going into the trial helpless. Other units noticed Unit 7's study session, started asking questions. Within an hour, the humans had an impromptu navigation class happening in the common area, teaching maybe 40 recruits from different species the basics of getting from point A to point B without letting technology do the thinking. The instructors watched this with complicated expressions. They're disseminating knowledge that gives them advantage, Shunvier observed. They're undermining the trial's difficulty curve, another instructor added. Thexral just watched in silence. Finally, no. They're demonstrating exactly what we're supposed to be teaching. Adaptation, resource sharing, understanding that individual advantage means nothing if your unit fails. Let them teach. This is educational. For who? The students or us? Yes. Deployment came with the storm in full fury. The transport ships struggled through the atmospheric turbulence, dropping units at their designated coordinates with all the grace of rocks thrown from orbit. The northern wasteland earned its name. Barren, rocky. Nothing grew here. Nothing lived here. It was geology performing the concept of hostility. Unit 7 hit the ground hard. The transport didn't even fully land, just ascended low enough for everyone to jump, then fought back in the sky before the wind could slam it into the canyon walls. They were in a narrow valley between ridgelines that reached maybe 300 meters high. The wind screamed through the gap, carrying dust and small rocks with enough velocity to sting exposed skin. Visibility was maybe 50 meters. The temperature was dropping fast as the storm blocked both suns. Santos pulled out the hard copy map, an actual piece of treated paper that wouldn't fail if the electronics died. The map showed their current location, their objective 30 kilometers northeast, and absolutely nothing helpful about the terrain between. Okay, she shouted over the wind. Comm check. Everyone functional. The short-range comms worked, barely. Each unit member confirmed status. Objective is 30 kilometers northeast. Terrain is going to be challenging. We need to maintain visual contact with each other. Nobody wanders off. Nobody gets separated. Understood. Confirmation from all members. Krixthal, Velshah, you two take point. Your enhanced durability means you can handle the wind better. Thorn, your middle rear position. If anyone falls or gets blown off course, you're our anchor. Talvik, rotate position with Vex pair. Your enhanced perception can spot hazards. Humans will manage navigation and coordination. Everyone stay within 10 meters of the person next to you. Questions. What is our objective? One of the Vex asked. Santos checked the map's mission brief. Secure a supply cache and signal for extraction. The cache contains critical resources needed by other units. So we are support for the broader exercise. Looks like this seems less dangerous than previous trials, which probably means the danger is something we haven't identified yet. You are deeply paranoid. I am deeply experienced. There's a difference. They moved out into the storm. The wind was brutal. It didn't just blow, it attacked. Gusts strong enough to stagger even Thorn. The Hectarians at point leaned into it, their low center of gravity and heavy chitin armor making them natural windbreaks. The rest of the unit moved in their wake, using them as mobile shelter. Progress was slow. The terrain was loose rock and hard pan, offering no protection and terrible footing. The dust in the air was fine enough to get through most protective gear, coating everything, getting into joints and seals and optical systems. After 2 hours, they'd covered maybe 4 kilometers. This is unsustainable, Talvik said through the comm. At this rate, we will not reach the objective within 72 hours. Agreed, Santos said. We need to find shelter. Wait out the worst of the storm. The mission brief said nothing about waiting. The mission brief also didn't account for the storm intensity. This is judgment call territory. We can push through and risk injury or equipment failure, or we can wait for conditions to improve. The unit debated this for 3 minutes, which was about 2 minutes longer than anyone wanted to stand in the screaming wind arguing about tactics. Finally, Chun spotted something. There, 300 meters west. That rock formation looks like an overhang. They detoured. The overhang was actually a shallow cave system, carved by water that hadn't flowed here in 10,000 years. It provided shelter from the wind. Not comfortable, but survivable. Unit 7 settled in, established watch rotations, broke out rations, checked equipment for damage. Yuki pulled out her scanner, which was mostly useless but still had some basic functionality. Electromagnetic interference is actually getting worse. The storm's peak intensity won't hit for another 6 hours. So we wait, Santos said. Use the time to rest and plan. When the storm eases, we move fast. This seems inefficient, Crixthal said. This is adaptive, Santos countered. Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. Right now, waiting is more effective than moving. They waited. The storm raged outside. Inside the cave, the unit talked, shared stories, learned about each other in ways the previous trials hadn't allowed time for. Thorn told them about her homeworld, where the gravity was 3 times Garrison Prime, and the atmosphere was so thick you could swim through it if you really tried. Where buildings had to be carved from solid rock, because anything else would collapse under its own weight. Where people had developed 4 arms, because 2 weren't enough to manipulate tools in those conditions. The Vex explained their hive mind consciousness, how they experience reality as both individuals and collective simultaneously. How decisions were made through instantaneous consensus. How being separated from the greater collective felt like partial blindness, but also offered strange freedom. Talvik shared Korathi philosophy, the meditation techniques that let them alter their perception of time. The warrior monk traditions that saw combat as a form of moving prayer. The belief that every opponent was a teacher. The Hectarians talked about their clan structures, the way their society organized around military excellence, the honor codes that governed combat, the complex mandible language that existed alongside standard speech, conveying subtext and emotion that translators couldn't capture. And the humans told stories about Earth, about a planet so dangerous that every environment was trying to kill you in different ways, about a species that evolved without natural weapons or armor or venom, that survived by being too stupid to quit and too creative to fail. Wait, Velshaw said, your planet has multiple apex predators? And you're not one of them. Nope, Kai said. We're actually pretty low on the food chain naturally. We just got really good at tools and group tactics. But you dominate your planet now. Yeah, turns out tools and group tactics beat natural weapons every time. Eventually. How long is eventually? Few 100,000 years? Give or take. The non-humans processed this in silence. Your species spent hundreds of thousands of years being prey, Crixthal said slowly. And you, what? Decided to stop. More like we got good enough at not dying that we started expanding into new environments. And every new environment tried to kill us in new ways. So we got better at not dying. It's kind of cycle. This explains so much about your psychology, one of the Vex said. Your species has evolutionary trauma written into your baseline behavior patterns. You expect hostility because hostility was your primary environmental pressure. I mean, yeah, probably. Is that weird? It's terrifying. You're a species that evolved to expect everything to be dangerous and developed adaptation as your primary survival mechanism. You've turned paranoia into tactical doctrine. When you put it that way, it sounds bad. It's not bad. It's explaining why you people are so comfortable in situations that should induce panic. You're always expecting the worst. So when it happens, you're not surprised. You're just dealing with it. Huh. That's actually kind of accurate. The storm continued. They talked more. Shared food, carefully negotiating species' dietary requirements. Rested. Maintained watch rotations, even though nothing was moving in the storm except dust and regret. 6 hours later, the storm began to ease. The wind dropped from homicidal to merely dangerous. Visibility improved to maybe 200 meters. The temperature stabilized. Okay, Santos said. We move. Fast pace while conditions allow. We need to make up lost time. They pushed hard for the next 10 hours. The terrain didn't improve, but the weather did. They covered 15 kilometers, putting them more than halfway to objective. The unit moved efficiently now, everyone understanding their role, communication smooth, even through the limited comms. Around hour 18, they encountered another unit. Unit 3, mixed composition, but heavy on Dravic members. 3 of them, plus assorted other species. They were moving perpendicular to Unit 7's route, heading toward a different objective. The units spotted each other at distance. Stopped. Assessed. Units were supposed to be independent. Cooperation wasn't forbidden, but it wasn't encouraged. This was supposed to be a competitive training environment. Santos made a decision. She activated her comm on open broadcast. Unit 3, this is Unit 7. Requesting parley. Silence. Then, Unit 7, this is Unit 3 actual. Parley acknowledged. What do you want? Information exchange. We share navigational data and hazard locations. Both units benefit. Why will we do that? Because the storm is going to pick up again in about 4 hours according to the weather pattern. Because we've identified 3 major hazards between our current position and the objective zones. Because sharing information costs nothing and might save lives. Long pause. Stand by. Unit 3 was clearly debating internally. Finally, agreed. Approach for data exchange. Weapons safed. No hostile intent. The units met in the middle. Representatives from each, Santos and Chun from Unit 7, 2 Dravic from Unit 3. They spread maps on a flat rock and compared notes. Unit 3 had encountered a collapsed canyon system that looked navigable but wasn't. False route that would add hours of backtracking. Unit 7 had mapped a thermal vent field that was unstable and dangerous. Both hazards marked on both maps now. This is unusual, one of the Dravics said. Her name was Granite, and she was built like her name suggested. Cooperation between units. Is it working? Shin asked. Yes, but it's unusual. Unusual doesn't mean wrong. It means unexpected. The Academy teaches individual excellence. The Academy teaches survival. Seems like cooperating is better for survival than competing. Granite considered this. You are Unit 7, the humans unit. We've heard stories. What kind of stories? That you think differently. That you prioritize unit cohesion over individual performance. That you, how is it phrased? That you treat combat as a team sport rather than individual trial. Combat is a team sport, Santos said. People just forget that sometimes. Not forget. Most species evolved as apex predators. Individual excellence was survival. Your species evolved as what? Persistence hunters? Pack hunters? Both. Neither. Humans hunted by being annoying and patient. We couldn't outrun prey, so we just followed them until they got tired. Could take days. But eventually they'd collapse and weed. You know, pointy stick. Dinner. That's horrifying. That's persistence hunting. Don't need to be fast if you could just keep going longer than the other guy. And this translated into your military philosophy. Pretty much. Can't beat them with strength? Outlast them. Can't outlast them? Outsmart them. Can't outsmart them? Team up with someone who can. There's always an option if you're willing to get creative. The units parted, both with better information, both with slightly better understanding of each other. They moved off toward their separate objectives. Unit 3's navigator, a Karathi named Zenar, spoke to Granite as they walked. The humans are changing the Academy's culture. I noticed. Is this good or bad? I don't know. But it's working. Unit 7 has 0 casualties across 3 trials. Their methods are effective. Effectiveness is not the same as proper doctrine. Perhaps. But perhaps proper doctrine needs updating. They walked on through the wasteland. Behind them, Unit 7 was making good time toward their objective, which they reached at hour 36. Ahead of schedule despite the storm delay. The supply cache was exactly where the map indicated. A reinforced container half buried in the rocky ground, marked with Academy identification codes. The container was locked with a mechanical system, no electronics that the storm could fry. Okay, Santos said. We secure the cache, signal for extraction, mission complete. Everybody clear on their roles. Confirmation all around. Crixthal and Velsha established perimeter security. Talvik scouted the surrounding area for threats. The Vex began working on the lock mechanism. Thorn and the humans set up the signal beacon, a purely mechanical device that used reflected light to create a visible marker for extraction craft. The lock took 20 minutes to crack. The Vex had to work through the mechanism manually, their distributed intelligence processing the mechanical puzzle faster than any individual could. Inside the cache, medical supplies, water purification units, emergency rations, exactly what other units would need if they encounter problems. This is a support mission, Yuki observed. We're not completing our own trial. We're enabling other units to complete theirs. That's actually clever test design, Chen said. It's not testing individual combat skills. It's testing whether units will prioritize broader mission success over personal achievement. Do you think all objectives are like this? Kai asked. Some units doing critical tasks, some doing support? Probably. And we won't know which is which until after the trial. So every unit has to treat their objective as critical. They set up the beacon. The signal light began pulsing, a bright flash visible for kilometers in the clear post-storm air. Now we wait for extraction, Santos said, which according to the brief, could be anywhere from 2 hours to 24 hours, depending on aircraft availability and weather conditions. They established a defensive perimeter, rotated watch positions, broke out rations, and waited. Hour 39. No extraction yet. The storm was building again in the distance, another wave of electromagnetic fury rolling across the wasteland. Hour 42. Still waiting. Some units were checking in via short-range comm, reporting their status. Unit 12 had completed their objective. Unit 8 was still en route. Unit 3 had encountered unexpected hostiles and was requesting support. Unit 7 listened to these comms with growing concern. Unit 3 is 12 kilometers from our position, Talvik noted. Their route back to safe zones will take them through the incoming storm. Not our problem, Crixthal said. We completed our objective. We await extraction. But we could help them, Kai said. How? By abandoning our position? By risking our own extraction? By being good neighbors? This is a trial, not a neighborhood. Santos held up a hand. Wait. Think about this strategically. Unit 3 is carrying critical intelligence from their objective. If they fail to extract, that intelligence is lost, which could mean other units fail their objectives because they don't have the information they need. The trial isn't just about individual unit success. It's about overall mission success. You are speculating, Velsha said. I'm reading between the lines. Every trial has been teaching us something. First trial taught individual survival. Second trial taught mixed unit cooperation. This trial is teaching what? That we're all part of a bigger system. That individual success doesn't matter if the system fails. That's a significant assumption. It's a hypothesis worth testing. The unit debated this. It got heated. Crixthal argued for staying put and following protocol. Santos argued for supporting Unit 3. The Vex ran probability calculations and concluded that both options had merit and risk. Talvik meditated on it and provided no useful input because apparently enlightenment doesn't help with tactical decision-making. Finally, Thorn settled it. We are Unit 7. We have completed our objective. Our success is confirmed. Unit 3 has not confirmed success. If we do nothing, they may fail. If we help and they succeed, total mission success increases. If we help and both units fail, we have at least acted in service of the broader goal. The choice is between guaranteed individual success and potential collective success. I vote for potential collective success. That's actually a really clear way to frame it, Kai said. Okay, I'm in. The unit voted 7-4 in favor of supporting Unit 3. The 4 who voted against agreed to follow unit decision despite personal reservations. Santos activated her comm. Unit 3, this is Unit 7. We have completed our objective and are awaiting extraction. Understand you're experiencing difficulties. We can provide support if you need it. Advise your status. Static. Then, Unit 7, this is Unit 3 actual. Status is complicated. We secured our objective, but encountered hostile forces during extraction. 2 casualties. 3 wounded. Movement is slow. Storm is approaching our position. We will not reach safe zones before storm hits. Can you make it to our position? Negative. Wrong direction. Would add 8 kilometers to our route. Then, we come to you. Send your coordinates. We're moving in 10 minutes. Unit 7. You will risk your extraction window. You will risk your own safety. What? Santos looked at her unit. At the Hectarians who'd voted against this. At the Vex who'd calculated the risks. At Thorn who'd made the decision clear. At the humans who'd never questioned it. Because that's what units do. We support each other. Sending our position. We'll meet you halfway. Unit 7 out. They packed up fast. Left the supply cache secured but marked. Kept the beacon running so extraction craft could still find the location. Moved out toward Unit 3's last known coordinates. The storm was coming. Visibility already dropping. Wind picking up. They had maybe 2 hours before it hit full force. They pushed hard, running when the terrain allowed, climbing when it didn't. The unit moved like they'd been training together for years instead of weeks. Everyone knew their role. Everyone trusted each other. They found Unit 3 at hour 45. The unit was in bad shape. 2 members down completely, being carried by the others. 3 more injured, but mobile. The whole group moving at maybe half speed. Granite, Unit 3's leader, looked at Santos with an expression that might have been relief or disbelief. You came. Of course we came. You sent a distress call. Not a distress call. Just a status update. Sounded like a distress call to me. What's your situation? We secured the objective. A data core that other units need. Got ambushed by hostile forces during extraction. Lost 2 members. 3 more wounded. We can make it out, but not before the storm hits. Then, we move together. Combined unit. 18 members. We share the load. Share the burden. Get everyone out. This will slow you down. So we'll be slow together. Better than being fast alone while you're stuck here. Granite made a sound that translators couldn't quite process. Your species is insane. We get that a lot. Thorn, can you carry one of the casualties? Crixthal, Velshah, you 2 take the other. Everyone else, redistribute equipment so the wounded aren't carrying weight. We move in 10 minutes. They moved as a combined unit. 18 members from 2 different tactical groups, working together like they'd trained for it. The storm hit at hour 47. Full force. Worse than the first wave. The wind was strong enough to knock Talvik off his feet. The dust was thick enough to turn breathing into a conscious effort. They pressed on. Because stopping meant dying. Because going back meant failing. Because forward was the only direction that mattered. Visibility dropped to 5 meters. They moved in a chain, each person holding onto the person in front of them. They couldn't see the terrain. Could barely see each other. Navigation became pure dead reckoning. Santos and Chun calling out directions based on their map, and their best guess about how far they traveled. At hour 53, Chin's leg went through a hidden crack in the ground. He fell hard, ankle twisted. Not broken, but badly sprained. He couldn't put weight on it. The unit stopped. Assessed. Leave me, Chin said. I'll slow you down. Shut up, Santos said. Kai, help him. We keep moving. You should leave me. Protocols say casualties who can't move are left with emergency beacon for later extraction. Protocols can go to hell. We don't leave people behind, even when it's practical, especially when it's practical. That's when it matters most. Kai and another unit member supported Shun between them. They kept moving. The storm lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of stumbling through near-zero visibility. 6 hours of fighting wind that tried to tear them apart. 6 hours of holding on to each other because letting go meant getting lost, and lost meant dead. At hour 59, the storm began to ease. At hour 61, visibility improved enough to navigate. At hour 63, they spotted the extraction zone. Both units stumbled into the safe zone together. 18 members. 2 casualties in critical condition, but alive. Multiple injuries. Everyone exhausted. Everyone intact. The extraction coordinator, a Bravac medical officer, stared at them. You're 2 different units. We're 2 different units, Santos said. Now we're just one very tired combined unit that would really like medical attention and possibly a nap. Unit 7. You abandoned your extraction point. Temporarily relocated to provide emergency assistance. That's not standard procedure. Good thing we're not standard then. Medical teams swarmed both units. The casualties were stabilized. The injuries were treated. Everyone was accounted for. On the command deck, Fexral and his staff were reviewing the trial data in silence. Unit 7 abandoned a completed objective to rescue another unit, Shun VA said. I observe, Fexral replied. This was not anticipated behavior. No, it was not. It worked. Both units extracted successfully. All members survived. Combined casualty rate is lower than predicted for units operating independently. Yes, Commander. We designed this trial to test whether units would prioritize their own success over collective mission goals. We expected most units to prioritize themselves. We expected casualties. We expected units to abandon other units in distress, because that's what has always happened in this scenario. And Unit 7 did the opposite. And it worked. And now 6 other units are reporting that they also provided inter-unit support during the trial. Unit 7's behavior pattern has propagated. The humans have. They've changed the trial's outcome distribution. Fexral was quiet for a long time. Pull the full trial data. I want casualty rates compared to historical averages. I want inter-unit cooperation incidents logged and analyzed. I want everything. The data came back in an hour. Historical average casualty rate for third trial, 33%. Current cycle casualty rate, 12%. Historical inter-unit cooperation incidents, 0.2% of trials. Current cycle, 38% of trials. Statistical significance, impossible to achieve by chance. Fexral read the data 3 times. Then, he turned to his staff. Call a full instructor meeting. Now, this changes everything. The meeting assembled in the command center. 15 instructors. 60 combined years of academy experience. They reviewed the data. They debated the implications. They argued about methodology and philosophy and whether this was progress or degradation of standards. Finally, the Academy's senior tactical instructor, a grizzled Karathi named Master Vorthan, who'd been teaching for 30 years, spoke. I have trained thousands of cadets. I have seen every permutation of talent, cowardice, excellence, and failure. I have taught species who could move faster than thought, hit harder than artillery, survive wounds that would kill most beings. And I have never seen anything like this. The humans, someone said. No, not just the humans. All of them. The humans are the catalyst, but the change is broader. The cadets are learning to cooperate across species boundaries. They're learning to value collective success over individual achievement. They're learning that the unit is stronger than the individual. These are not new concepts. We teach these concepts, but we've never seen them implemented like this. Because we've never had humans before, Shun VA said quietly. Exactly. The humans don't have advantages that let them succeed individually. So they develop social technologies, cooperation frameworks, cultural approaches to problems that their biology couldn't solve. And now they're teaching those frameworks to species who never needed them before. Is this good? Another instructor asked. I don't know, Vorthan admitted. But it's effective. Casualty rates are down. Performance metrics are up. Unit cohesion is exceeding any historical precedent. The question isn't whether it's good. The question is whether we adapt our training to incorporate these methods or whether we try to eliminate them. Fexral had been silent through the entire discussion. Now he spoke. The Academy's mission is to produce soldiers who can survive and prevail in the galaxy's most dangerous environments. For 3,000 years, we have done this by testing individuals, pushing them beyond their limits, filtering out weakness. This has worked. But, he paused. But perhaps we've been filtering out the wrong things. We filter out those who cannot survive alone. But warfare is not conducted alone. Combat is not an individual sport. It's what did the human call it? Team sport. Perhaps we should be filtering out those who cannot cooperate, those who cannot adapt, those who cannot set aside their individual excellence for collective success. You're suggesting we fundamentally change Academy doctrine based on one trial cycle with one unusual species? Someone asked. I'm suggesting we consider the data. Our job is to produce the best soldiers possible. If the current cohort is demonstrating higher survival rates and better tactical performance using methods we don't teach, then perhaps we should learn from them instead of trying to correct them. This is unprecedented. So are the results. The meeting continued for 3 more hours. It ended with no consensus, but with agreement to continue monitoring the current cohort, to compare their performance against historical standards, to evaluate whether their methods were broadly applicable or specific to their unique composition. In the barracks, the combined units 7 and 3 were settling in for rest period. Medical had cleared most injuries as minor. Chen's ankle was splinted, but he'd recover. The 2 critical casualties were stable and would survive. The units were sitting together, mixed species, sharing stories about the trial, laughing about the storm, processing the trauma of nearly dying together. Granite sat next to Santos. Your units saved us. Our units saved each other, Santos corrected. You would have made it out. Eventually. We just made it faster. You risked your own extraction, your own safety, your own trial success. Why? Because you needed help. Because we could provide it. Because that's what you do when someone is in trouble. You help. This is not standard military doctrine for most species. Maybe it should be. Granite was quiet for a moment. My people, Dravik, we evolved on a high-gravity world where individual strength was survival. We value self-reliance, independence. We are taught that requesting help is weakness. That's a really hard way to live. It's our way. But watching your unit, watching how you operate, I'm beginning to think our way may not be the only way, or the best way. There's no best way. There's just different ways that work in different contexts. Your way works for Dravik on Dravik worlds. Our way works for humans on human worlds. Here at the Academy, maybe we need a combined way. Something that takes the best parts of everyone's culture and builds something new. That sounds complicated. That sounds like cooperation, which is always complicated. But it's also usually worth it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Around them, the combined units were settling in for sleep. Tomorrow would bring the final trial. The one that would determine who graduated and who didn't. The one that would test everything they'd learned. But tonight they rested. Together. Mixed species and mixed bunks. Breaking every traditional boundary the Academy had maintained for 3,000 years. And it felt natural. Like this was how it should have always been. In the command center, Fexral made a final log entry for the day. 3rd trial complete. Casualty rates at historical lows. Inter-unit cooperation at historical highs. Human influence continues to propagate through cohort. Recommend full evaluation of training methodologies after final trial completion. Something is changing. I do not know if we are witnessing evolution of military doctrine or dissolution of standards. But I know we cannot stop it. The cohort has momentum. They have belief. They have methods that work. All we can do is observe and learn. The fourth trial will be definitive. Either their cooperative approach will shatter under maximum stress, proving it is situational, or it will hold, proving that 3,000 years of academy doctrine has been incomplete. I do not know which outcome I prefer. Both possibilities are disturbing in different ways. He filed a report, shut down his workstation, left the command center. Behind him, the Academy's automated systems continued their work, monitoring, recording, analyzing, documenting what might be the most significant shift in military training philosophy the galaxy had ever seen. All because of file mistake. All because 32 humans got invited to a school they should never have survived. All because those humans decided that survival was better together than alone. The final trial would come in 5 days. 5 days to rest, to heal, to prepare. 5 days until the galaxy learned whether the human way of doing things was a viable alternative to 3,000 years of established doctrine. 5 days until everything changed, or everything stayed the same. The tension was building. The stakes were clear. The whole academy was watching. Because somehow, impossibly, a species that wasn't supposed to survive the first week had made it to the final trial. And they brought everyone else along with them. That was the human trick. Not being the strongest or fastest or most dangerous, but being the ones who made sure everybody made it. Together. The 5 days before the final trial felt different. There was a weight to them. An awareness that everything up to this point had been preparation for something that actually mattered. The Academy's atmosphere shifted from routine hostility to something approaching gravitas. Instructors were quieter, more observant. They watched the cadets with expressions that suggested they were witnessing something they hadn't expected to see. Combat drills continued, but the intensity felt different, like the instructors were studying the cadets instead of just training them. The cadets noticed. Species mixing in common areas had become normal now. Meal periods looked less like species-segregated cafeterias and more like actual social environments. Training sessions included voluntary mixed species, sparring, and tactical exercises. The Academy's formal structure hadn't changed, but the social dynamics within it had transformed completely. Santos found herself in the training courtyard during free practice time, working through hand-to-hand drills with Talvik. The Karathi's enhanced perception meant he could see her strikes coming before she fully committed to them, but Santos had been adapting her technique, using feints and misdirection to confuse his predictive ability. "You're getting better," Talvik observed, blocking a strike that should have connected. "Your movements are less linear, more chaotic." "Chaos is strategic," Santos replied, resetting her stance. "If I'm predictable, your enhanced perception gives you absolute advantage. If I'm chaotic, you have to process more possibilities, which slows your response. This is not how humans typically fight. Humans typically fight, however, we need to fight. Adaptation is the whole point." They continued sparring. Around them, other mixed species pairs were training together. Hectarians working with Vex on synchronized tactical movements. Dravik learning speed techniques from Karathi. Humans teaching anybody who asked about low-tech survival skills. Krixthal approached after the sparring session. "Human Santos." Question. "Sure. What's up?" "The final trial. Rumors suggest it will be extremely difficult. All the trials have been extremely difficult." "No, this is different. The instructors are preparing something unprecedented. There is concern among the cohort." "Concern about what?" "That the final trial will be designed to break the cooperation patterns we have developed, to force units back into competitive, individual survival mode, to test whether our methods are robust or merely situational." Santos considered this. That makes sense. Every trial has tested something specific. This one would test whether we maintain our approach under maximum pressure. And if we fail, if the cooperation breaks down, then we learn something. Either cooperation only works in certain conditions, which is useful knowledge, or it works under all conditions, which is also useful knowledge. Either way, we learn. You are very calm about this. Panicking doesn't help. Planning does. Kricksthal's mandibles clicked in that way that suggested amusement or frustration. I'm beginning to understand why humans are so difficult to predict. Your emotional regulation is completely disconnected from your threat assessment. That's because emotions and threats are different things. Emotions are how we feel about threats. Threats are what we do about them. Confusing the two gets people killed. That evening, the entire cohort was summoned to the main assembly hall. 215 cadets, down from the initial 400 who'd started the first trial. Mortality rate was still running below historical averages thanks to the cooperation initiatives, but the academy remained dangerous. People had died. More would die before this was over. Commander Thexral stood on the central platform. His presence alone commanded silence. When he activated his translator, every cadet in the hall focused completely. Final trial. Designation. Absolute scenario. You will face a situation with no correct solution. A scenario where every choice is cost. Where survival means sacrifice. Where victory means loss. This is the trial that determines whether you graduate or whether you spend the rest of your lives wondering if you were good enough. He paused. The silence was profound. You will deploy as individual units. No inter-unit cooperation permitted. Your comms will be restricted to intra-unit only. You will be isolated from other units. Your objectives will be unique. Your challenges will be unique. But, another pause. But the objectives are interconnected. One unit's success may depend on another unit's actions. One unit's failure may doom others. You will not know these connections. You will not know how your decisions affect others. You will operate with incomplete information in a scenario designed to force impossible choices. The assembly erupted in agitated sounds. This wasn't training. This was psychological warfare. Testing not just combat skills or survival instincts, but moral calculus. Decision-making under conditions where every option was terrible. Thexral waited for silence. The trial begins in 48 hours. You will have that time to prepare. Mentally, tactically, emotionally. Use it well. Because once the trial starts, there are no pauses. No timeouts. No mercy. There is only the scenario and your choices and the consequences that follow. Dismissed. The cohort dispersed in unusual silence. The normal post-briefing discussions were muted. Cadets moved in small groups, speaking quietly, processing what they'd just learned. Unit 7 gathered in their briefing room. Nobody spoke for a full minute. Finally, Kai broke the silence. So, that sound bad. Understatement, Chun said. Anyone have thoughts on what kind of scenario forces impossible choices? Yuki asked. Velisol kliktar mandibles slowly. Triage scenarios. Multiple casualties with limited resources. You cannot save everyone, so you choose who lives and who dies. Hostage scenarios, Talvik added, where saving hostages means exposing your unit to casualties. Where the correct tactical choice is abandoning the hostages, but the correct moral choice is attempting rescue. Resource scarcity, one of the Vex contributed, where multiple units need the same critical resource, but there is not enough for all. Where your unit's survival requires denying another unit their survival. Those are all terrifying options, Kai said. Anyone have good news? The good news is we have 48 hours to prepare mentally for any of those scenarios, Santos said. The bad news is there's probably no way to actually prepare for making those kinds of decisions. So what do? We establish principles now. Before the stress, before the pressure. We decide what Unit 7 stands for, what we will and won't do, what our baseline ethics are. Then, when the scenario hits, we have a framework instead of chaos. Thorn rumbled in agreement. The human is correct. Decisions made under duress are often reactive and poor. Decisions made with preparation and principle are more robust. They spent the next 3 hours establishing their ethical framework. It was messy. Every species had different values, different moral calculus, different lines they wouldn't cross. The Hectarians valued unit cohesion and mission completion above individual survival. They would sacrifice themselves for the group without hesitation. The Vex valued collective intelligence and information preservation. They would accept casualties if it meant critical data survived. Talvik valued honor and the protection of the helpless. He would risk mission failure to save innocent lives. Thorn valued practical outcomes. She would make whatever decision maximized total survival, even if it violated other principles. The humans valued. This is where it got complicated, because humans had competing values that didn't always align. They valued individual life, but also collective success. They valued moral action, but also practical outcomes. They valued honor, but also survival. We're contradictory, Yuki observed. Our ethics don't form a coherent system. No, santo zagreed. But that's actually useful. It means we can process multiple ethical frameworks simultaneously and choose contextually. We're not locked into one moral system. We can adapt. That sounds like moral relativism, Talvik said, which seems dangerous. It's not relativism. It's contextual ethics. Different situations require different moral frameworks. The trick is knowing which framework applies when. They kept working. By the end, they had something resembling a shared ethical system for Unit 7. It wasn't perfect. It had contradictions, but it was theirs. And it gave them something to hold on to when everything else fell apart. Similar conversations were happening in other units. The Academy's briefing rooms were full of cadets trying to prepare for the unprepared, trying to make peace with choices they hadn't yet faced, trying to build frameworks that might not survive contact with reality. The instructors watched and made notes. This was part of the trial too. The preparation, the anticipation, the psychological stress of knowing something terrible was coming but not knowing what form it would take. They're preparing, Shunva observed from the monitoring station. Of course they are, Thexrao replied. The question is whether preparation helps or hurts. Some cadets will over-prepare and freeze when the actual scenario doesn't match their expectations. Others will under-prepare and panic when they realize the depth of the challenge. What about Unit 7? Unit 7 is doing something different. They're not preparing for specific scenarios. They're preparing their decision-making framework, building shared values, establishing trust protocols. Will that work? I don't know. It's never been tried in my experience. 48 hours later, the cohort assembled at the deployment zone. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Cadets checked equipment with mechanical precision. Nobody was talking. Everyone was focused inward, preparing themselves mentally. Unit 7 stood together in their designated area. Santos performed a final comm check. Everyone was functional. Everyone was ready. Or as ready as anyone could be for a trial designed to have no right answers. The deployment briefing was short. Each unit received encrypted mission packets. The packets would only decrypt once the units reached their deployment zones. No opportunity to strategize with other units. No opportunity to coordinate. Unit 7 boarded their transport along with 3 other units. The ride was silent. The other unit's members stared at walls or equipment or nothing. Unit 7 mostly stared at each other, drawing strength from presence, from the knowledge that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The transport dropped them in a ruined facility. Industrial complex. Looked like it had been a processing plant before something catastrophic happened. The structures were half collapsed. Machinery was broken and dangerous. The air was thick with chemical smells that the environmental sensors flagged as hazardous, but not immediately lethal. The unit assembled. Santos opened the mission packet. The decryption completed. She read the briefing. Twice. Her expression went from neutral to deeply troubled. "We have a problem," she said quietly. Everyone gathered around. Santos displayed the mission parameters on her datapad. Mission objective, secure, and evacuate civilian population from compromised facility. Estimated civilians, 47. Estimated time to facility compromise, 3 hours. Transportation capacity, 30. The math was obvious. Brutal. Impossible. They couldn't save everyone. This is a moral calculus exercise, Yuki said, her voice small. They're making us choose who lives and who dies. There has to be another way, Kai said. There's always another way. Is there? Velsha asked. Look at the scenario parameters. The facility will collapse in 3 hours. The destruction will be total. We have transport capacity for 30 individuals. There are 47 civilians. The numbers do not work. Then, we change the numbers, Santos said. We find more transport. We extend the timeline. We alter the scenario. Ow! I don't know yet. But, I know we're not making that choice. We're not deciding who dies. We find the option that saves everyone or we die trying. That is irrational, one of the Vex said. You would risk unit casualties to avoid making a logical triage decision? Every time. That's the human way. Your way will get people killed. So we're choosing who to abandon. At least our way means we tried. They moved into the facility. The structure was a nightmare. Unstable floors. Collapsed ceilings. Exposed electrical systems that sparked and hissed. The chemical smell got worse as they went deeper. The environmental sensors were screaming warnings about air quality and structural integrity. They found the civilians in a central chamber. 47 beings of mixed species. Scared. Some injured. All aware that they were trapped. That rescue might not come. That rescue might not be enough even if it did come. Santos addressed them directly. I'm Sergeant Santos, Unit 7, Garrison Academy. We're here to evacuate you. We're going to get everyone out. I need you to listen carefully and do exactly what we say. Understood. A Bravac civilian, elderly, spoke up. There are 47 of us. Your transport only holds 30. We heard the Academy instructor's broadcast. This is a triage exercise. You cannot save us all. Watch me, Santos said flatly. Unit 7, Assessment. How do we increase transport capacity? Krixthal and Velsha examined the transport specifications. The capacity limit is based on weight and atmospheric requirements. We could exceed rated capacity, but risk structural failure during flight. Define risk. Approximately 40% failure probability at 50% overcapacity. What if we reduce weight elsewhere? Strip non-essential equipment. That might reduce failure probability to 25%. Still unacceptable. What else? Yuki had been scanning the facility. There's another transport. Where there was. Crashed vehicle in the north sector. Looks mostly intact. If we could repair it, even partially, even if it could only hold 10 people, that would be enough. Can we repair it in 3 hours? I don't know, but I can try. Talvik, go with Yuki. Assess the crash transport. Report back in 30 minutes with repair feasibility. They moved out. The rest of the unit organized the civilians. Assessed injuries. Started prepping people for evacuation. The injured would go first. Then the elderly. Then everyone else. Talvik and Yuki returned in 25 minutes. The transport is damaged, but potentially functional. Main engine is destroyed. Secondary propulsion is intact. Navigation is offline. We could theoretically get it airborne using manual control with secondary propulsion only. It would be unstable and dangerous, but possible. How dangerous? 60% crash probability, but 40% survival probability. That is an optimistic interpretation. It's the interpretation we're using. How long to make it flight capable? 2 hours. If everything goes perfectly, which it won't, then we have 30 minutes of buffer. Chun, Krixthal, you're with Yuki on the repair crew. Everyone else, we prep civilians for dual transport evacuation. Move. The units scattered. Santos stayed with the civilians, keeping them calm, organized, ready. She didn't tell them about the 60% crash probability. Didn't tell them that even if both transports worked, they might not make it. Didn't tell them that the Academy probably expected Unit 7 to make the triage choice and leave 17 people behind. She just kept them focused, kept them hopeful, because hope was a tool as useful as any plasma rifle. The repair crew worked frantically. The crash transport was worse than initial assessment suggested. Systems were fried. Structural integrity was questionable. But Yuki was brilliant and stubborn and refused to accept failure as an option. Chun and Crixthal followed her lead, implementing fixes that were more improvisation than engineering. At hour 2.3, the secondary propulsion sputtered to life. Navigation was still offline. Manual control only. But it could fly. Probably. Maybe. We're ready, Yuki reported. I think. Sort of. Mostly. Good enough. Load the civilians. 10 in the repaired transport. 37 in our primary transport. 37 exceeds capacity by a lot. I know. We'll make it work. Load them up. The evacuation began. The civilians moved quickly, organized by the unit's preparation. The injured were secured. The elderly were assisted. Everyone was accounted for. Then, the facility started collapsing. Not in 3 hours. In 2 hours, 45 minutes. The Academy's timeline had been optimistic or deliberately understated. The structure groaned. Walls cracked. A ceiling section fell, missing the evacuation route by 5 meters. Move faster, Santos ordered. We're out of time. The loading accelerated. Civilians were practically thrown into the transports. Unit 7 members helped, lifted, carried. Thorne single-handedly hoisted 3 injured civilians into the primary transport. The facility groaned again. Louder. More structural sections collapsing. The floor beneath them was starting to crack. We're loaded, Velshaw reported. 37 in primary. 10 in secondary. All civilians accounted for. But there's a problem. What problem? Both transports are overweight. Primary is 40% over capacity. Secondary is at capacity, but has no room for a pilot. Someone has to stay behind to manually launch it. Time stopped. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to die so everyone else could live. This was the real test. Not whether they could save everyone. Whether they would sacrifice themselves to do it. Santos looked at her unit. At Crixthal and Velshaw, who'd argued for Tria. At the Vex, who'd called her irrational. At Talvik, who valued honor. At Thorne, who valued practical outcomes. At the humans, who valued everything. Too much. Not enough. I'll stay, she said. I can pilot this secondary transport remotely until it reaches minimum safe altitude. Then I'll trigger the emergency beacon and wait for extraction, assuming the facility doesn't collapse on me first. The probability of survival is less than 10%, one of the Vex said. Probably, but someone has to do it. I'm unit leader. It's my call. No, Kai said. We vote. That's how we do things. There's no time for voting. Then we do it fast. All in favor of Santos sacrificing herself for this mission. Raise your hand. Nobody raised their hand. All in favor of finding another option. Raise your hand. 11 hands. Mandibles. Appendages. Whatever species appropriate gesture indicated agreement. Okay, Kai said. So we find another option. Yuki, can the secondary transport be automated? Even badly. Maybe. If I had time. Which we don't. How much time? 15 minutes to implement basic automation. It would be crude. Failure prone. But possible. Do it. Everyone else. Strip weight from both transports. Everything non-essential. Weapons. Equipment. Armor. Everything. Reduce weight to reduce crash probability. They moved. Fast. Desperate. The facility was collapsing around them. Ceiling sections falling. Walls cracking. The floor developing fissures that glowed with chemical fire beneath. Yuki worked on the automation system. Her hands were steady, even though everything around her was chaos. She was coding directly into the transport's control systems, bypassing safety protocols, implementing algorithms that would never pass inspection, but might work for 15 minutes, which was all they needed. The unit stripped weight. Weapons went first, then armor, then everything else that wasn't bolted down. Personal equipment, supplies, everything. They reduced the transport's weight by maybe 12%. Not much, but maybe enough. Automation is done, Yuki said. It's terrible. It might work, or it might crash immediately. 50-50 chance. Better odds than certain death, Santos said. Load everyone up. Final boarding. Now, the unit boarded the primary transport. The civilians were already secure. The transport was dangerously overloaded. Warning klaxons were screaming about structural integrity and weight distribution and 50 other critical failures. Santos ignored all of it. She initiated launch sequence for both transports simultaneously. The primary lifted with sluggish, protesting grace. The secondary transport's automation kicked in, and it rose jerkily but functional. They climbed. The facility collapsed completely beneath them, the entire structure pancaking into the chemically burning ground. If they'd been 30 seconds slower, they would have been caught in the collapse. Both transports made it to safe altitude. The primary landed at the extraction zone with heavy impact, but no casualties. The secondary transport, running on Yuki's improvised automation, circled twice and then landed. Hard. One landing strut collapsed. But everyone survived. 47 civilians. 11 Unit 7 members. 0 casualties. Mission success. The extraction coordinator was a VRYNN instructor named Velkoth. He stared at the two transports, at the civilians filing out, at Unit 7 climbing out of the primary transport covered in dust and chemical residue and looking exhausted but intact. You saved everyone. That was the objective, Santos said. The objective was triage, choosing who to save. Nope. The objective was evacuation. We evacuated everyone. Mission complete. That's the transport capacity, the timeline. The scenario was designed to be impossible. Then, I guess we did impossible. Can we get medical attention for the injured civilians now? Or do you want to keep discussing semantics? Medical teams swarmed the civilians. Unit 7 was directed to debriefing. They walked together, supporting Chun, who was limping again, his ankle having taken more abuse during the evacuation. We did it, Kai said quietly. We actually did it. We did something, Santos replied. Whether we did it, right, is going to be up to the instructors to decide. In the command center, Fexral and his staff were watching the mission replay in complete silence. They'd watched Unit 7 receive an impossible scenario. They'd watched them refuse to accept impossibility. They'd watched them improvise, adapt, and technically succeed while violating approximately 40 different safety protocols and defying the explicit scenario design. They saved everyone, Shunbi said. Her voice suggested she was struggling to process this. Yes, the scenario was designed to force triage, to test moral calculus under pressure. They just ignored the design and found a different solution. Yes, is that even allowed? Nothing in the rules says it isn't. They were told to evacuate civilians. They evacuated civilians. The method was unorthodox, but the outcome meets mission parameters. They risked everything, multiple times. Any of those decisions could have killed them all, but didn't. That's not the same as saying it was the correct tactical choice. Fexral was quiet for a long moment. No, but it might have been the correct human choice, which is something I'm beginning to understand we never accounted for. The final trial continued for another 20 hours. Other units faced other impossible scenarios. Some made the triage choices. Some tried to find alternatives. Some succeeded. Some failed catastrophically. Unit 12, the Karathi who'd cooperated with Unit 7 earlier, faced a hostage scenario. They attempted rescue despite impossible odds. Lost 3 members but saved 17 hostages. Mission classified as partial success with unacceptable casualties. Unit 3, the Dravik Heavy unit that Unit 7 had rescued during the storm trial, faced resource scarcity. They split their resources with another unit despite it reducing their own survival probability. Both units survived, but at reduced capacity. Mission classified as cooperative success with increased risk. Unit 8 faced a scenario where completing their objective required abandoning wounded unit members. They completed the objective, but refused to abandon anyone. used 46 hours instead of the allocated 48 to extract everyone. Mission classified as success with timeline violation. The pattern was clear. Units that had adopted the cooperative framework were making different choices than the Academy expected. They were prioritizing unit cohesion and life preservation over mission efficiency. They were taking risks that traditional doctrines said were irrational. They were refusing to accept that some choices were impossible. And it was working. Not every time. Not without cost. But the overall survival rates were higher. The unit cohesion was stronger. The psychological trauma was lower. The Academy's historical model said that 40% of the cohort should fail the final trial. That acceptable casualties were part of testing whether cadets had the resolve to make hard decisions. This cohort had 20% failure rate. And most failures were technical or tactical, not moral. The cadets were passing by refusing to accept the Academy's moral framework. The final briefing came 72 hours after the trial began. The entire remaining cohort assembled. 154 survivors out of the 215 who'd started. Lower casualty rate than any cycle in 50 years. Commander Thexral stood before them. He looked different, like something had shifted in his understanding of what he was observing. "You have completed the trials," he said simply. "You are graduates of the Garrison Academy. You have survived what most species cannot survive. You have exceeded our expectations. You have changed this institution in ways we did not anticipate." He paused. The Academy has existed for 3,000 years. In that time, we have refined our methodology. We have optimized our training. We have created the most effective military education system in known space. We thought we understood what made soldiers successful. We thought we knew how to identify and cultivate excellence. Another pause. This cohort has proven that we were incorrect, or at least incomplete. You have demonstrated that cooperation can be as valuable as individual excellence. That moral courage can be as important as physical courage. That refusing impossible choices can sometimes lead to better outcomes than accepting them. He looked directly at Unit 7. At Santos, who was trying very hard not to smile. At the mixed species group, who'd basically accidentally revolutionized military training doctrine by being too stubborn to accept failure. Specifically, Thexral continued, the human cohort and their associated units have demonstrated methodologies we will be incorporating into future training cycles. Cooperative tactics, moral framework development, adaptive problem solving. These are now official Academy doctrine. Effective immediately. The assembly was silent. Processing this. The Academy never changed doctrine. Never. It had been the same for 3,000 years. Doctrine was bedrock. Unchangeable. Except it had just changed. Because of a file mistake. Because 32 humans got sent to a school they shouldn't have survived. Because those humans were too stubborn and too creative and too cooperative to die the way they were supposed to. "You are dismissed," Thexral said. "Graduation ceremony in 2 hours. Congratulations. You have earned it." The assembly dissolved into celebration. Species mixing freely. Units hugging. Some crying. Some laughing. Everyone processing that they'd made it. They'd survived. Unit 7 gathered in their briefing room one last time. They sat in silence for a moment. Just existing together. Processing. "We did it," Kai said finally. "We did," Santos agreed. "We changed the Academy. We did. We're going to be in textbooks. Future cadets are going to study what we did. Probably. That's where to think about." Yuki was already on her datapad, taking notes. "We should document our methodologies. Write up the frameworks we developed. Make sure the knowledge transfers effectively." "Yuki," Kai said, "we just survived the deadliest military academy in the galaxy. Can you maybe not think about homework for like 5 minutes?" "This isn't homework. This is legacy. We have an opportunity to influence how the galaxy trains soldiers. That's important." "She's right," Thorn rumbled. "Our methods worked. Others should know them. Others should use them." Velsha clicked her mandibles in agreement. "The Hectarian military will be interested. in cooperative doctrine. It contradicts much of our traditional training, but results are undeniable. The Vex Collective will integrate these findings, the Vex pair said. The concept of shared ethical frameworks is novel and effective. We will propagate this knowledge. The Karathi monasteries will study this approach, Talvik added. The idea that group meditation can enhance unit cohesion is worth exploring. They talked for another hour, planning, documenting, making sure that what they'd learned wouldn't be lost, that the next cohort would have the benefit of their experience. The graduation ceremony was held in the main assembly hall. The surviving cadets assembled in their units, standing together. Mixed species formations that would have been unthinkable 4 trials ago. Now they looked natural, right? Commander Thexral presided over the ceremony. He called each unit forward, presented them with their graduation designations, acknowledged their achievements. When Unit 7 was called, they moved forward as one. 11 beings of 6 different species. They'd started as statistical impossibility. They were ending as proof of concept. Unit 7, Thexral said. Final survival rate, 100%. Mission completion rate, 100%. Innovation score, unprecedented. Your designated honor unit of this cycle. Your methodologies will be studied. Your approaches will be taught. You have changed this academy's fundamental understanding of what is possible. Well done. Santos accepted the designation on behalf of the unit. She saluted. Thexral returned it. As they walked back to their position, Kai whispered, "We're the honor unit. We're. Holy crap, we're the honor unit." Apparently stubbornness and cooperation are virtues now, Chen replied. Who knew? We knew. That was the whole point. The ceremony continued. Every surviving cadet was acknowledged. Every unit was recognized. The survival rate was the highest in 50 years. The cooperation rate was the highest in Academy history. The overall performance metrics exceeded every historical benchmark. This cohort had rewritten what the Academy thought was possible, all because of a file mistake. After the ceremony, there was a reception period. Cadets mingling with instructors. Families connected via holocom to congratulate graduates. Different species cultures creating a chaotic but joyful atmosphere. Santos found herself approached by Master Vorthan, the senior tactical instructor who'd spoken at the instructor meeting. Human Santos. A moment of your time. Of course, Master Vorthan. I've been teaching at this academy for 30 standard years. I have trained over 4,000 cadets. I have seen every variation of talent and failure, and I have never seen anything like what you and your associated units accomplished. Thank you, sir. That was not a compliment. Or, not only a compliment, it was an observation. You came to this academy with no expectations. No tradition. No established doctrine telling you how things were supposed to be done. And that freedom allowed you to approach problems without preconceptions. We just adapted. That's what humans do. Yes, but you adapted in ways that made everyone around you adapt as well. You created a cooperative framework and then exported it to other units. You demonstrated that what we thought was fixed doctrine was actually just habit, and habits can be changed. Is that bad? No, it is uncomfortable for us, for the instructors. We have taught the same methods for so long that we forgot they were methods. We started treating them as truth. You reminded us that there are always alternatives, always other approaches. This is important. Santos wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she just nodded. Vorthan continued. The academy will be different now. Because of you. Because of the humans. The next cohort will be taught cooperation as core doctrine. They will be taught adaptive thinking. They will be taught that sometimes the correct answer is to refuse the question and find a different question to answer. This is revolutionary. We just wanted to not die. Yes, but you wanted everyone to not die. Not just yourselves. That distinction matters. That distinction changes everything. He saluted. Santos returned it. Vorthan walked away, leaving Santos standing there processing what had just happened. What did Master Vorthan want? To tell me we accidentally started a revolution. Did we? Apparently. Huh. Cool. Cool. Okay. We changed 3,000 years of military doctrine. Yeah, by being nice to each other and refusing to leave people behind. That's not revolutionary. That's just human. Maybe that's the revolution. The idea that being human is a valid tactical approach. Deep. Also, there's food. Want to get food? Yes. Food sound good. They joined the rest of Unit 7 at the reception. Mixed species sharing stories. Planning futures. Some would stay in military service. Some would return to their home worlds. Some would stay in touch. Some would drift apart. But they'd always be Unit 7. The unit that refused to accept impossible. The unit that changed the academy. The unit that proved cooperation worked even when doctrine said it shouldn't. 3 days later, Santos was back on a transport heading to Earth. She completed the greatest military training program in the galaxy. She'd survived when nobody expected her to. She'd started a revolution without meaning to. She sat by the observation port, watching Garrison Prime recede into the distance. The planet that had almost killed her. The planet that had changed her. The planet that would never be the same because of a simple file mistake. Her comm chimed. Message from Chun. He was heading back to China. Then, staying in touch, right? Unit 7 forever. Then Kai. Yeah. Unit 7 forever. Also, I'm writing a book about this. Going to be insufferable about it. Then, Yuki. Already drafting the academic papers. This is going to revolutionize military training theory. It's going to be amazing. Then, the non-humans. Crix thou. The Hectarian military wishes to consult on cooperative doctrine. Your expertise is requested. Payment is negotiable. Vel Shah. My clan wishes to honor Unit 7. You are invited to the Hectarian homeworld. Transportation provided. Talvik. The Karathi monasteries wish to study your meditative frameworks. You would be welcome as guest teacher. Thorn. My clan wishes to never see your stubborn human face again. This is Dravic humor. You're always welcome. The Vex. The collective wishes to maintain communication protocols. Your perspective is valuable to our distributed consciousness. We may contact you with questions. Frequently. Santos read the messages. Smiled. Sent back. Unit 7 forever. See you all soon. We've got a galaxy to change. And they would. Because the file mistake wasn't really a mistake. It was the universe accidentally hitting randomize on military training doctrine and discovering that sometimes accidents create better outcomes than planning ever could. The Garrison Academy would never be the same. The humans had seen to that. Not through superior strength or speed or biological advantages, but through stubborn refusal to accept that some people have to die. Through cooperation that transcended species boundaries. Through the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, taking care of each other was more important than following doctrine. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave that idea to a species that had spent millions of years surviving impossible conditions by working together. It was going to learn that humans weren't the strongest or fastest or most dangerous species, but they might be the most persistently cooperative, the most stubbornly optimistic, the most creatively adaptive, and in a galaxy that measured value in individual capability, that made them the most revolutionary species anyone had encountered. All because someone forwarded an email to the wrong embassy. All because 32 humans said, sure, Deadly Military Academy. Sounds fun. All because those 32 humans decided that survival was better together. The transport jumped to warp. Earth was 3 days away. Santos had graduation documentation. Letters of recommendation from academy instructors who'd spent 4 trials being confused by her existence. Job offers from military organizations across the galaxy who wanted to learn these new cooperative doctrines. She had accomplished everything she'd set out to accomplish. She'd survived. She'd graduated. She'd changed the system. And she'd done it by being exactly what humans were best at being. Too stubborn to quit, too creative to fail, and too loyal to leave anyone behind. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. And the Garrison Academy the deadliest training institution in known space, would forever carry the mark of the species that accidentally revolutionized military training by simply refusing to die alone. 3,000 years of doctrine, changed by a file mistake, changed by 32 humans, changed forever. And somewhere in a records office on Kepler Station, the exhausted administrator who'd made that original file mistake would eventually learn what they'd accidentally set in motion. They'd probably need therapy, but they'd also deserve a medal. Because sometimes the best decisions are the ones nobody meant to make. And sometimes the most important revolutions start with someone clicking the wrong button on a form. The galaxy would remember this cohort, this cycle, this moment when everything changed. They'd remember Unit 7. They'd remember the humans who walked into the deadliest academy in known space with nothing but knives and optimism. And they'd remember the lesson that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that kills the most efficiently. Sometimes it's the one that keeps people alive against impossible odds. And humans had just proven they wielded that weapon better than anyone.